Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Thursday morning, headed into a holiday weekend. So much going on. Great World Cup game last night, watching the United States advance to the round of 16, which I thought was the absolute minimum acceptable performance for them in this World Cup, and they have made it there. Now, Belgium. Can they do it? We'll get to that. We got the Utah Hockey Club. The Mammoth are making moves. And then more moves. And then more moves. Greg Wyshynski is going to join us later this morning. And we're going to talk with him. You know, what is the main accomplishment here? Alexander Kerfoot leaving. They got an unrestricted free agent who could be headed out the door. They're making other deals. I mean, this is more change than I expected on a team that has shown growth the last 2 years. However, if management feels like they're heading into the proverbial cul-de-sac and they're stuck and there's no clear way forward, sometimes they got to make moves. And I think that applies to the Mammoth, and I think that applies to the Utah Jazz as well. Thought a lot about this Kessler deal. We'll get to it. It definitely hurts the club in the short run. But as difficult as this summer is, it might make next summer much more palatable. So we got all these things to get to here off the top of the show. Let's start with the World Cup win, and that was quite a day. England, Europe has ruled soccer forever. Africa has been on the verge of being fantastic and exploding in talent. And Africa is sending players all over the world. There's players all over Europe, all over Major League Soccer. But it hasn't quite translated to the dramatic success in the World Cup that some people would hope. Now, there have been, Morocco was just in the semis 4 years ago, so it's not like there haven't been any results, but other teams that have broken through to the quarterfinals. Nigeria had their moment in the sun. Senegal maybe is having a moment here this year. There was a time Cameroon had a great run. So there have been these opportunities, but it hasn't really. And going to the bigger cup really split people, going from 32 to 48 teams. Hey, it's going to water it down. We're going to have blowouts. There's going to be 8-1 games. They're going to let in teams that just aren't as good. And they're going to, the traditional powers are going to dominate. And then there's the thought that, hey, Italy, the United States, the Netherlands have all taken turns not qualifying, not making it to 32. The soccer has been getting deeper. And so let's open the tournament up. And, of course, then there's FIFA like, hey, can we make more money? And there's a part of me that is really sure they're going to 64 teams in another 15 to 20 years, somewhere in there. I can't prove that. I don't know that, but that's what it looks like to me. It's going to happen. And actually, I think this tournament has I think the tournament in general has validated the thought that there's 48 teams worth of playing at this level, and it's a good thing they expanded it. And I think yesterday showed that for sure. You get to knockout play. It's surprising. Some of the teams that are there, a lot of teams from Africa advance, and even when they don't advance, it's just so entertaining. England, Harry Kane, who's got to be one of the top 5 goal scorers in the world, has to score late, and England advances and they win 2-1, but man, they were in trouble. they were in real trouble against DR Congo. That was intense. And if you thought they were in trouble, check out Belgium. Oh my gosh. They were down 2 goals, somehow score late twice, and then get a penalty at the end of overtime, aka added extra time. And so 100 is supposed to go 120 minutes, and at 125, when they get it all sorted out, they finally convert the penalty and win the game 3-2. Wild. And then you got the game with the United States and Bosnia. And the U.S. hasn't beaten a European team in years. It's 10 wins and 2 draws in the last 12, something like that. It's really been a bad stretch. And here comes Bosnia. But come on, man. This is where international soccer drives me nuts. Yes, they're a European team, but come on, this is a European country that has about as many people as Utah, right? They're both, Utah and Bosnia are both between 3 and 3.5 million people. Can you imagine Utah trying to put together a team and beat the United States? Just Utah? Just Utahns. Nobody else. Yeah, that'd be a stretch. So here's Bosnia trying to do it. It's all the drama about the U.S. has never won knockout games. It's a bigger tournament, and you're getting a team that's I mean, not that the FIFA world rankings are great. There's flawed. There's not enough data points and all that. But it's still also not wrong. It's not perfect, but they're not up in the night either. And the U.S. is like 50 spots in front of Bosnia. And the United States is playing at home. So win the game. And they did. But I thought, all you can do is look good and beat the teams that are in front of you and look good doing it. And they did. They get another shutout. They had a couple of them here in the tournament. That's great because they hadn't gotten those in the previous year. It had been a minute. They were leaking goals. And they score, then they take a red card that was, dodgy at best, but stuff happens, and so it happened. You got to overcome it, and they did. They earned a free kick. That was a great free kick. It has driven me nuts for years when I hear the argument, the United States will be good at soccer when we get our best athletes playing it. Our best athletes are playing basketball, and they're playing baseball, and they're playing football. And yes, that's true, but the United States doesn't get out-athleted in the World Cup. The United States doesn't lose because the guys aren't big enough, strong enough, fast enough. The United States hasn't won because the technical ability, which in simple, just playground language, the ability to make the ball do what you want it to do. Do you need to curve it around the defender or curve it around the goalkeeper and tuck it inside the post there on the far side of the goal? Do you need to hit a pass and split two defenders, and do you need to hit it with the inside of your foot or the outside of your foot or the laces or a back heel? And right foot, left foot, right? And just there's so many things. Can you visualize 3 passes ahead? I mean, what Wayne Gretzky could always do in hockey. When I was growing up, I was like, Wayne Gretzky knows where the puck is going. When do you know where the ball is going? And can you get there? And that ability to visualize it in real time. You don't hit the pass too easy. You don't hit it too hard. You don't overhit it. You underhit it. It's perfectly weighted, perfectly timed. And the U.S. has always struggled with that kind of stuff. That free kick, Messi looked at that free kick and thought, ooh, that was good. And Messi is the master of the free kick. And he had to have loved that free kick because that free kick was awesome. And they get the second goal and they win the game. Gutsy performance against a team they should have beaten. Now, Belgium, this is the first time in this tournament, Monday night in Seattle, round of 16 for a trip to the quarters, which I think that win makes this tournament a success. And then anything after that is gravy. They've only been to the quarters twice ever, and once was in 1930 when there were only 13 teams. And they made it to the semis then. And then 2002. So getting to the quarters will be a big deal. Winning this game will be a big deal. For the first time, they're playing a team in Belgium that's ranked higher than them. I think Belgium's 10 and the U.S. is 15. This is the first time in this tournament that the U.S. has played a team ranked in the top 20. They were supposed to beat everybody. The one game they didn't win, Turkey, they sat their starters. So what we learned in that game is although the U.S. is much better, the depth falls off somewhere around player 13, 14, 15. The U.S. is not 20 players deep. That's what we learned watching the Turkey game. So, but all in all, it was a good game. They scored twice. They hit the post. They had 2 goals called back correctly for offside, but they were the better team. Good performance. A lot of pressure on them. They were expected to win, and they came through. So, and you can say it was tough. It was difficult. It was it was tough for England, but they did it. A couple of days ago, it's tough for Brazil, and they did it. It was also a couple of days ago, it's tough for Germany, and they didn't do it. So now the United States and Canada have made it to the round of 16, and Germany and Italy did not. Italy didn't even qualify for the tournament. So the sport is getting deeper. The traditional powers, it's a struggle. I mean, congrats to England for advancing and Brazil for advancing. Those are traditional powers. It was hard. The only team that's really making it look easy is France. Spain's doing all right. They've had some hiccups, but France has looked awesome. They have just looked awesome. So the big three, the 3 hosts all alive. Mexico has looked really good. I mean, they're just shutting people out just game after game here. They're very impressive. And Mexico and the U.S. and Canada all through as hosts to the round of 16. All right, DJ and PK. Enough of the soccer. Let's get to the basketball. Walker Kessler, huge story. The Jazz trade him, and the trade happened in the last half hour of our show yesterday. It was all happening in real time, and the details are coming in, and we didn't have a lot of time to think about it. And reflecting on it the last 24 hours, reading what some people have written, listen to what people have said. I think a few things come out here. The thing I said in a commercial break before it broke, right, going to break, like 5 minutes before it broke, I thought they were going to sign him because they couldn't afford to let him walk away. Of all the scenarios, to me, the worst one, and you always want people to seize the best one, but eliminate the worst one first, right? The worst one was they walk away and get nothing for him because he's a good NBA player. And there's a reason the Jazz offered him $28 million. Now, you can say when you offer him that kind of money, you don't love him, you like him. You're not in love with him, but you do like him. And they've never really publicly swooned over him. There have been compliments, but there's always this sense that they need more out of him. And I think that's where it sits now. I think the Lakers have signed a player, traded for a player with upside. And he's going to be in the spotlight. From the Laker perspective, they're paying him like he's the third best player on the team. He needs to be the third best player on the team, and he needs to play a lot. And he's got to come through. And it's not going to be this quietly supportive, okay, we're rebuilding and let's go. It's LA now, and win. And if you don't win, well, they're going to go watch Matthew Stafford throw to Puka Nacua. Or they're going to go watch Shohei Ohtani pitch and hit home runs. The bar has been raised. And he hasn't been in this bright a spotlight with this high expectations before. How's he going to handle it? Maybe he flourishes, maybe he doesn't. He's got to be better just because they really pretty much used all their assets. There's not a clear path forward for the Lakers unless they discover undrafted free agents, unless they, find their version of Joe Ingles, some 27-year-old over in Europe, and come in and help them. And it's not out of the realm. I mean, Austin Reeves, right? And he wasn't a number one pick. He wasn't exactly Big Vic, right? So they found him, and Oklahoma City found Lou Dort. So can you find some more of those guys? Because they've spent most of their money. They've used most of their draft picks. They've spent most of their cap room. There's no clear path forward for the Lakers. But they needed a big. And the Jazz, I get why they did the trade. I got to say that 5 minutes before the trade happened, trading him now wasn't really on my radar. I mean, obviously it's a possibility, but I just didn't think it was very likely because honestly, it was the Lakers, and I didn't think they had much the Jazz wanted that they would part with. It didn't occur to me that they would part with so much draft capital. The Jazz, I mean, who got more draft picks? The Boston Celtics for Jaylen Brown or the Jazz for Kessler? It's clear. So it's not even arguable. But the Lakers had to have him. They have to put a good team around Luka Doncic. The clock's ticking. He's in his prime. And Rob Pelinka's got to be feeling the pressure because the Lakers have new ownership and the owners didn't hire him. And so if they're not good and Luka's unhappy, what's going to happen? Are the owners going to leave? No. Are they going to get rid of Luka? No. They're going to get rid of Pelinka. So Pelinka had to make the best deal. Kessler was the best of available deals, so he made it. Will it be good enough? Time will tell. I don't want to say it's championship or bust in LA, but it's pretty close to that. They've won so many championships, nothing else really feels good or matters. And those owners are planning on winning another World Series. They've just won 2, so we'll see what kind of patience they have. So I think the Jazz sensed maybe we can get something here. And it didn't occur to me that they'd get 2 unprotected first-round picks and 2 swaps, but they did. It's going to hurt the Jazz in the short run. I've been sitting here saying the Jazz are going to win 50 games next year. I guess I'm going to have to back up on that and go to the Jazz might be able to win 50 games if everything comes together, but the goal probably needs to be 45. They're not going to be as formidable defensively. They could still be good, and they still need to be held to that standard. But I was really thinking they can definitely be top 10, and maybe they can be top 5 defensively. I thought they could be really good, and now we'll never know. Now, that's the downside. They're in the short run, the Jazz are worse. The draft picks can't play, and draft picks can't win games. So that's where we sit. Now, in parentheses, he puts after that, unless the Jazz flip the draft picks right now and go get somebody, which I'm not expecting, but it could happen. I mean, for example, the Mammoth did it last week. So if the deal is there, you can turn and pivot and go. But they're largely assembling the roster now, so I'd be a little surprised. Having said that, I've been surprised by how active the Mammoth have been this week after they were so active in the draft. It's a lot of changes for a team that's improved significantly the last 2 years. But sometimes you think you're stuck in the cul-de-sac. And I think if the Jazz kept Kessler, they were going to be in the cul-de-sac. And that was kind of what I was anticipating. Hey, sign him now because you don't dare let him walk away, and then find if you can find a deal at the trade deadline or next summer. But they were going to be up against it next summer because they would have spent all the money. They'd be right up against the luxury tax. And Keontae George, we'll see how he plays this year. But what kind of a raise is he going to get? Is he going to be 25, 30, 35, $40 million? What's he going to be worth? How good is he going to be, and how much are they going to win? And the better this year goes, probably, not for sure, but the better he's played, the more he's worth. Now they've got some room. It could still get difficult. Absolutely. Other young guys could play well and earn bigger contracts, and there may be a trade out there at some point, and that may eat up some cap room. But moving Kessler has given them a little breathing room. Now, I do think there's a chance we could see a couple moves here. The Jazz could go out. I was getting to the point, well, if they're going to sign Kessler and looking where the price tag was going, there's not going to be room for a veteran in the perimeter. Now, maybe there is cap room for a veteran on the perimeter. Maybe they go and do something there. What are they going to prioritize? Maybe they don't want to spend the cap room. Maybe they just need to hold on to it now so they can make a trade later and bring more salaries back in a trade. What are they going to prioritize? It's like you have to really do this in every sport. You've got your window here in the off season, then you got to think what you can do midseason, and you got to think what you can do a year from now. I think it's really hard to project further than that. But covering RSL, I see that all the time. And I think we see that in the NBA. And I think now that we got a couple of years here in the NHL, we're seeing the same pattern there. So are they going to get a good enough deal here this summer to flip some of those assets, or keep the old powder dry and see how it goes down the line? We know that when they got all the picks for Gobert and Mitchell, that they did move some of those picks and they've held on to others. They had a lot of them, and they're sitting on a lot of picks now. They haven't used or flipped all of the picks, although they're starting to run out, from the Cleveland, Minnesota deals. But in 27, I think they've still got one of them there. They've traded the lesser of the three, and they've got their own picks also. How valuable are those going to be? Where are the Jazz going to slot now? That's really hard to figure out. And then you got a draft lottery that's hard to figure out. Are they going to be, the 15th best team or the 18th best team or the 12th best team next year, but have the first, second, or third draft pick? I don't know how this is going to work out. It is fascinating. So what we know is in the short run, I'm going to have to quit talking about 50 wins like I expected. It becomes much more of a hope than it does an expectation. But at the same time, the possibility to make more moves. The cake just isn't fully baked. And it wouldn't have been fully baked if they signed Kessler, but he would have been a big piece of the puzzle. The problem was, the cake would not have fit in the box to take it over to Grandma's house for the birthday party. So there were going to have to be some adjustments made. And it turns out one of the big adjustments was, let's let Kessler go. They never fully came out and said they loved him. When all the fans were excited after the first year, Danny Ainge was like, well, he did some nice stuff, but, and an offer $28 million. That's not nothing. That's a lot of money, but it's not 35, 40, 45 million, right? So there's clearly some hesitation there. And Keontae George is coming. And then Ace Bailey's coming. So they had to make some choices, and they made one. And that is a lot of draft picks. All right, DJ and PK, we're going to take a break. We'll have more PK and I reacting to Kessler right at the end of yesterday's show. We're going to play that for you. Coming up next, some of our other quick instant reaction and hot takes to that, and some of you weighing in. And then John Brice talking college football after that. Stay with us, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The big news here, Walker Kessler traded to the Lakers. It happened in the last half hour of our show yesterday. We were getting instant reaction, ours and from the fans, and you may have already been at work. So we'll let you listen to that as all the excitement happened. Here's PK and I with the Walker Kessler news. Shams shaking it up Jazz fans reacting. ESPN and Shams reporting Kessler to the Lakers for unprotected picks in 2031 and 2033 and pick swaps in 2028 and 2030. Jazz fans, what do you think? We got it up on Twitter, David DJ James, on Facebook, DJ and PK. And Jazz fans are going to town. Matt, well, at least it wasn't on the 4th of July. I told my 2-year-old, she said, shoot, that's not good. He needs to get a Band-Aid.
Yeah, I got one in my ear. I can lend them.
Oh, man. The thing for the people who don't like this trade, the thing you got to recognize here is that they're already paying $95 million to 2 forwards this year in Jackson and Markkanen. It goes to $100 million next year and $105 the year after. So basically, they're spending $50 million on one forward, $50 million on another. If they brought Kessler in and paid him at $32.5 million with Nurkic, they're paying that position $43.5 million.
Yeah, I would look at it as big men, though, not necessarily center forward. But I still get your point.
But 3 of the 5 spots, because you're going to run 2 guards out there.
Well, I would look at it for center, but the 2 forwards I think are more interchangeable.
They are.
So the centers, you're right. That's inarguable.
It's just so much money, and I just.
Oh, the only thing that surprises me here. You got Bailey down the road. You got George down the road.
Yes, and so the only thing that surprises me here is how quickly they're doing this. But definitely do not let him walk for nothing. You can't. He's got too much value, and then the trade proves he's got too much value. They got 2 first-round picks unprotected. Maybe you'll catch a break. Maybe you won't. Are the Lakers going to be good? Are they going to be healthy? Whatever.
That doesn't matter.
And you got 2 swaps.
The picks are assets. That's 5 and 7 years from now.
They may be traded in the meantime, as we've seen with the Cleveland and Minnesota picks that got lumped together and to Phoenix for a 2031
pick.
So
don't worry about where the Lakers are going to be at that time because nobody has any idea where they're going to be.
Nor do we know how the lottery will work.
That's irrelevant. And you could use those picks to move up to get other picks. We've seen it last week in the draft. So don't worry about that.
We just saw the Utah Mammoth, though, last week. Trade a player, get 2 picks, immediately take one of those picks and turn around and get a goaltender.
Yes. So forget about where the Lakers are going to be.
And that may be the answer to what they're going to do because they could roll the dice and go with Nurkic and Jackson and Filipowski and say, they will always be matched up. One of those 3 will have to be matched up with the Wembayamas, the Jokers, whatever center, Kessler, whatever center these other Western teams are running out there. Primarily who you worry about.
I think the big question is, do they give Kessler a scoreboard tribute? I say no.
I say yes.
No, and no.
Okay, that question, was that what you would do or what you predict they will do?
Well, if they have any brains, they'll do exactly what I tell them to do.
But the world doesn't work that way. So now, personally, I wouldn't bother with it, but it does seem like the norm in the NBA, so I think it'll happen. 4
losing seasons.
He'll be blocking
and he goes to the Lakers.
But they want the
on
whole.
You. Kessler, you're dead to me.
They want the feel good. This is the organization that treats people. It's about the message they're sending to everybody else. It's not about whatever shot blocks and dunks they decide to put in the video.
He went to the Lakers.
And they got.
Why don't you just marry my best friend?
That is what I say about the Chargers moving to L.A. The Chargers leaving San Diego was a divorce. The fact they moved to L.A. is like they married your brother.
Would you like a true fact?
Can't happen. But it did.
What?
Would you like a true fact, as you guys like to say?
Yeah. Only if it's factual.
That would be our first producer who dropped that, right?
Yes.
It would be.
A long line of.
The Los Angeles Lakers have now traded more first-round picks for Walker Kessler than they did for Luka Doncic.
But I think that's like saying, oh, this player gets the most money. Yeah, Austin Reeves got the most money for an unrestricted free agent. But there'll be somebody else. The point I'm making is that it seems like the first-round picks for acquiring talent keeps going up.
But so they gave up 1 in 2029 in the Luka Doncic deal, and now Anthony Davis went over in that deal. But you've now given up 2 unprotected first-round picks plus 2 pick swaps in the alternating years. It's quite a haul for the Jazz.
Right, but the Lakers also think that they're going to be good, so nobody's going to want the swaps because they're going to be drafted 25th or later.
Right, so we don't know how that's going to work.
But they also don't have a first-round pick for the next 7 years now.
Yeah, I think that's dangerous. I've been saying that's right now.
Right.
That's to me that is dangerous. I would be so reluctant to do that. And they need Kessler to be all-star caliber now.
Yeah, he's got to come up big time. I mean, $30 million a year. You've got a $32.5, which is what he's going to get, $32.5 million. 4 years, $130 million. He's got to be their third best player.
Well, when you talk about...
He's got to be one of their big three. I mean, they're paying him like it. He's got to produce like it.
Double-double. It's got to be...
Better than the 11-10, 12-11 double-double.
Yes, that's a higher double-double.
Hit some free throws so you can be on the floor at the end of close games so it doesn't turn into hack a Kessler because you're at 55 or 60%.
Or he's Shaq-like and the games aren't even close.
I don't think he's going to be Shaq-like. Since Shaq was apparently the only thing close to Shaq in NBA history was Wilt, and that was just a little before my time.
No, I understand that. But the fact is, he's going to have to improve a lot. Not a little, a lot. And he's going to have to stay healthy. Obviously. These are all does, I think. So you got to get something. I love the fact that it's early in the process or earlier in the process, happening on July 1st. And now you know the uncertainty is gone, and you can deal with other uncertainties to make them certain.
I think your uncertainties to make them certain. That was good.
Yeah.
I think that your point about being reluctant to give up the draft picks, even if they're late, the fact the Jazz have hit to a degree, what degree still, we have to let these guys, get older and their careers play out, but the fact they've hit on a degree with Collier and hitting on Filipowski, now Svi Mihalik isn't a draft pick.
I think Sensabaugh has been hit on. Good enough for where he was drafted.
So Sensabaugh is at $4.8 million this year. Svi is at $3.8, Filipowski at $3, Collier at $2.7. That's 3 draft picks. Svi was not a draft pick. But to have good players that you're paying less than $5 million when you're going to be paying so many of these top stars $50 million, you got to turn around and find some value on these less expensive players. And whether you hit on draft picks or you hit on unrestricted, just some free agent you find who's undrafted and overlooked, Reeves, Ingles, somebody who's been in Europe and is maybe a little older, whatever. You've just got to find inexpensive players who can play. And you can say that giving up pick 24 or 28 in the draft isn't a big deal, but you got to find inexpensive players somewhere. And the math is working for the Jazz. And part of the reason we have this excitement about the roster is because they do have players who look like they can play who are down in that $5 million or less area. Going forward, like Cody Williams needs to take a big step forward because his money, 6, 7, 8 million, not 8, but 7.6, almost 7.7 million. That's going to matter when they're trying to re-sign Keontae. They may have to jettison him to sign Keontae in a year, unless he blows up and then he's a guy you're trying to hold on to and you're looking to jettison somebody else.
Right. But they've got options. The optionalities of it.
There it is.
We were discussing that word.
Optionality is the word of the morning. All right, Walker Kessler to the Lakers for unprotected first-round picks in 2031 and 2033 and pick swaps in 2028 and 2030. And Walker gets 4 years and $130 million. So he doesn't get that mid to high 30s that they were talking. But 32.5 is a pretty good neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And there he is. All right, more reaction to Walker Kessler coming up in this show, but John Brice joins us next. He writes for USA Today, just did a big story on Kalani Sitake. He's got a lot to say about BYU, also about the Utes, Notre Dame, Michigan, and Kyle Whittingham. We'll talk college football with him. Stay with us. DJ PK, and we're joined now by John Brice, college sports insider for USA Today. John, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. We wanted to talk to you. You spent a little time in Utah, and you didn't give us a call. You blew right through town without talking to us. But, hey, you got to hang out with Kalani Sitake and write a little story about him. And you got into him and the vibe he's trying to create around the program. And I don't think trying to create, he is creating around the program.
Yeah, that's the second time that I've gotten to spend some really in-depth quality time with Coach Sitake in the last few years. The previous one was for Football Scoop, and then this most recent one for USA Today. And I've gotten to know him at some of the AFCA conventions through the years as well, and had actually bumped into him this past January in Charlotte, and then was out this way last month and reached out to BYU and asked if I could come over, and ended up spending 4 or 5 hours on campus that day. Got some time with Aaron Roderick as well, but just always struck by the authenticity of Kalani Sitake.
Yeah, that's a very good word, because I would say genuine. You know, we've been doing this radio show for 25 years, so we're veteran guys here. And before that, for 14 years, I was the beat writer at the Salt Lake Tribune, and I covered these guys when they were players. And Kalani was that way as a young man, and he's certainly this way as an older man. The word genuine comes to mind as far as that goes. You know, I'd tell you a little story about him that when he was up at Oregon State for that brief time, and they Bronco Mendenhall took off, so it was obvious because of the religious connection that Kalani was going to be a top candidate, right? And so, you know, people were texting him and wanting to get his word on it, but, you know, he had to be low-key. Well, that season, which is in December, the time of year, Christmas Day, he gets in touch with me and tells me, hey, sorry, man, I couldn't get back to you, but I just want you to know, you know, I value our friendship and look forward to working with you, blah. And I get it, man. I've been in the business for years. I know you got to be quiet, but this is a little anecdote of his interpersonal skills, which I think are off the charts, and you have obviously experienced that, and get your thought on how that genuine and authenticity, as you say, is actually helping him build a really good program.
Yeah, you know, I've gotten to spend time with a bunch of different coaches around the sport this spring, particularly some first-year guys in the SEC and at the University of Memphis, and then Kalani certainly being a veteran. And I think that authenticity and that genuineness, as you put it, is critical in this era, because as a coach told me this past week at a symposium in Atlanta, he was like, I can spend 10 minutes watching an AI video and not know it's AI. My players will know in 10 seconds. And so I think players are really smart right now. They know real from fake, and Kalani Sitake is real. And just briefly on that anecdote note, I'm one of the people who saw Kalani in general boarding talking to people, just talking to random people, because I talked to him in general boarding getting ready to get on a flight cross country recently. And so because of that, you see that, and I was blown away when he gave me that quote that, you know, sometimes I'm sad when I see them put their AirPods in because I want to have a conversation with them. No coach does that. No coach does that. I'm at these conventions, and these guys are flying the university jets in or booster jets in, and they're getting in and out as quickly as possible. Kalani's standing in a line 10 deep with a crowd of Utah high school coaches talking to him as he prepares to fly back cross country into Salt Lake, no less, not even Provo. And Provo's got a great airport.
Yeah.
You get to interact with coaches in different leagues and all that, and a lot of coaches. Some coaches probably don't value this at all, so set them aside. But there's probably other coaches who do. But it's not necessarily easy to create this and then sustain it. So I'm interested in your experience interacting with other coaches. What can be done to sustain it? And why does Kalani do it? And how many other people are doing this? I mean, it's never going to be exactly the same, but how many people are in the same ballpark as far as creating this type of attitude around a program?
I would say Kalani Sitake and Marcus Freeman are two at the very tip top who have created and honed an authentic culture that is lasting and that is rooted in substance. And I think that's the biggest key. The sport, as you guys well know, has never been more transactional. And because of the way that those programs are rooted in reality and in realness with one another, I think that positions them. I think that Kalani said it in the story. Like, we pay guys. We're happy to pay guys. They should be paid. We're never going to be the highest lowest bidder. We will not get in a bidding war. Notre Dame is probably a little more aggressive in how much money it's spending overall, but it also values culture and will stop the bidding if it feels like a guy is going to be disruptive. So honestly, right off the bat, those are two of the top ones. Matt Campbell had a very similar culture at Iowa State. We'll see if it will translate to Penn State University. But those are really the ones that stand out to me. I'm not sure how much genuine culture is out there. Kyle Whittingham had it to a large extent at the University of Utah. Now he's challenged with building the same thing again at the University of Michigan. But when I was doing the story and when I was talking with people again over the weekend in Atlanta, then what really resonated with me is that, and I've spent a lot of time around Marcus Freeman, because when I'm not out in Utah, I'm in South Bend, and Kalani Sitake talked to me about Marcus Freeman, and I see a great number of similarities in those two gentlemen.
Also, too, you said you spent some time with Aaron Roderick. I don't want to go into detail, but I think the loyalty factor to Kalani is literally the number one reason why Aaron Roderick is at BYU, a veteran play caller who has had opportunities to leave, but his connection to Kalani keeps him there.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. We talked about that very component, and he talked about his loyalty to Kalani, and he made it clear in a smaller separate piece that my editors published yesterday about how grateful he was to continue working for Kalani, but to continue working for Kalani at BYU. And in my role, again, previously at Football Scoop and now at USA Today, I deal with agents a lot and college coaches' agents, and those two guys have turned down a lot of money. I'll just put it that way. Kalani Sitake and Aaron Roderick have turned down a lot of money through the years to stay loyal to BYU. I think it's refreshing. The sport needs more stories like that.
You make the point about the players' very finely tuned antennas, right? And they can get the fake from the genuine. But at the same time, players don't tend to turn down a lot of money. How valuable is this attitude that they've got at BYU, they got at Notre Dame, maybe they had it at Iowa State and Utah, now they're going through their own coaching changes there. How valuable is that in recruiting, and how much of it just comes down to dollars and cents? And does this just come down as like a tiebreaker when the bids are about the same? How much does it matter? Because you got playing time out there, you got whatever parents or coaches are exerting influence with their own interests and agendas.
Yeah, I think it can be a little bit more than a tiebreaker. Can it cause a guy to give a hometown discount? I think so. I think it can, maybe for a guy who's contemplating going into the portal after his first or second year and ends up staying and probably ends up taking a little less money to stay in order to continue to be a part of it. I think this is where BYU and Notre Dame separate themselves a little bit because of the value of the degrees, and they're both global brands in my opinion. And the BYU Comm School, the BYU Business School are really, really powerful engines, and Notre Dame certainly has its business school and prepares a lot of people for law school and medical school as well, and just the value of that Notre Dame degree. So I do think that it's a little bit more than a tiebreaker. I think there are different regions of the country that it's far more strictly transactional. And, I talked with a guy last week for a story we're working on to preview the college football season who lost a linebacker in conference. And the money there would blow your mind because this was not one of the power leagues. And he lost a linebacker to a rival in conference for $500,000. And the head coach said the kid called him as soon as he left the other coach's office. And he said, well, I hoped you signed it before you called me. So there is still some authenticity and some realness there when these guys are dealing with one another, even as they're preparing to lose them. But I do think culture matters. And I do think when you look at the overall roster turnover, and maybe it's a study later this year, or maybe it's a study in a couple of years, Notre Dame and BYU have not had as much roster churn as a lot of their peers.
You obviously have a familiarity with Notre Dame, and a lot of people here certainly are looking forward to Saturday, October 17th in Provo, Utah, Lavelle Edwards Stadium, thinking that obviously that's when they play BYU and the Notre Dame game. And who knows what's going to happen, but there's an opportunity at least for both teams to be undefeated and have it be the game of the week, blah, blah, blah. Could you give us some insight into what you're expecting out of Notre Dame this season?
Yeah, I just turned in my USA Today preseason top 25 ballot. I had both Notre Dame and BYU inside of the top 10. I will be at that game on the 17th of October. I'm extremely excited to attend and cover that contest. I think it will be one of the preeminent matchups in college football this season. I think Bear Bachmeier is really poised for a giant next step. I think he was kind of a raw athlete who just made plays because he's a heck of a football player last year. I think he will take a step this year as a more complete quarterback. Notre Dame is going to lean on the right arm of C.J. Carr, who I think will have an opportunity to go pro after this season. And then I think the Notre Dame defense will be one of the very best in all of college football. But I really like the Glasgow guy at linebacker for BYU. I think BYU's perimeter skill is slept on a little bit, and certainly L.J. Martin is an elite running back. So I think it will be one of the best games in college football this year. I think the week before I'm at Georgia, at Alabama, and then I get Notre Dame, BYU, and the week after that I maybe get Indiana, Michigan. So I'm going to have a pretty blessed October.
Nice.
John Brice, College Sports Insider for USA Today, joining us. In your story on BYU and Kalani, you did reference the scandal at Texas Tech, and I'm curious how far you think they're going to fall. Arizona State did go 7-2, and they got in the conference title game. It was a four-way tie at 7-2, and they won the conference title 2 years ago. Obviously, they're the only team that beat Tech last year. Utah and BYU aren't on Tech's schedule this year. Is there a team or two out there that can take Tech down and keep them out of the title game, or should we just pencil them in?
No, I definitely think that Tech has its work cut out for it. I think the Red Raiders will be really good on defense, and I like Joey McGuire. I think he's been put in a pretty untenable situation by that whole sordid saga. But I would not remotely pencil or pin Texas Tech into the Big 12 championship game. I know in speaking with some coaches, including some here in the Utah area, that they expect a big jump out of Central Florida this year. I'm not quite that far, but I do think the league is going to have some really quality teams. I know Lance Leipold is really motivated to get things rolling back. I like what Arizona returns in some key spots. Certainly, I think Utah will have a voice in it. We'll see what Devin Dampier does as he continues also to progress at quarterback. But no, I mean, BYU is my preseason favorite in the Big 12. BYU is the only team from the league that I put inside of my top 10. And I think that Texas Tech will be hard-pressed to be a 10-win team this year.
And why would you say that?
Because I think that, certainly the timing and Sorsby finally waving the white flag that everyone in America knew he should wave gives Tech all summer to transition, but they're still – They were going to pay Brendan Sorsby more than $6 million to be their quarterback for a reason. And the next guy on the roster is not Brendan Sorsby. Brendan Sorsby had the NFL held a supplemental draft. I had multiple NFL people tell me he had as high as a second-round grade, and some teams might have shaved it down. Some teams might have really given him a first-round grade in a typical year, but felt like they could get him on a second-round grade had there been a supplemental draft. And so I just think for all those reasons, you're going to have your work cut out for you. And you're going to be, even with Sorsby not playing, Texas Tech has now emerged as one of the villains in all of college football. Yeah. They started that. It trended that way last year with how much money they spent. This year they're spending, again, more than $50 million on that roster. They're kind of the poster boys, and they're leaning into it of being the renegade mercenaries of college football, but they're the renegade mercenaries without the quarterback they expected. So I really think that they're going to struggle to score points, and they're going to have some issues in that regard.
You think the Big 12 can get two teams in the playoff?
Boy, that's a great question. One, I can't answer it today. If you guys want to have me back on in the fall, then maybe I'll have a better handle on it. I'm not ready to say that yet. I think there are a couple of teams that could give the Big 12, that opportunity to get two teams into the playoffs. They obviously were incredibly close last year, and had it been a 16-team playoff, I think that would have been the perfect number last year. And I think BYU is a team that would have been capable, as well as they were playing against anyone not named Texas Tech, and just sort of the physicality that they played with and the different dynamics that they had on offense. So I think it's possible. I will not sit here and tell you that I don't think there's any path whatsoever for it, but I think it's a little bit of an uphill trek.
Billionaire booster Cody Campbell has fancied himself as a reformist, I guess, if that's a word, in college sports, right? And he's taken it to the highest levels. I think the Sorsby thing really shot down his credibility, and he comes off as a Texas Tech fan first and foremost, not necessarily what's in the best interest of college football. So I think that now, from going forward, whatever he says, I'm going to view a little more skeptically. What do you think of that?
I think that's fair, and I certainly understand that. I've got some of my colleagues that know Cody much, much better than I do. I will say I think that he truly does want to see college sports preserved and wants to see a more uniform playing field. But until that time occurs, then I think he's plenty happy to lean into it and completely exacerbate the problem. And it's almost like what you kind of alluded to as the hypocrisy of his words and actions are almost to underscore the hypocrisy of where college athletics are right now.
The University of Michigan is going to be getting a lot more attention in the state of Utah. There'll be some people rooting for the Wolverines. There'll be some people rooting against the Wolverines, but I don't think people are going to be able to take their eyes off Kyle Whittingham. And obviously his staff has not only former Utes, but obviously the Cougars defensive coordinator in Jay Hill, who played at Utah. Where do you think Michigan fits in the pecking order in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think they've got their work cut out for them. We'll see what kind of step forward Brice Underwood can make. We'll see how much Whittingham and company can do to kind of protect him and not put as much on him. I think that this will certainly be an exponentially better coached Michigan football team than what we saw a year ago or even the previous year under Sharon Moore. From all the people I've talked to, as a matter of fact, somebody on Whittingham's current staff told me point blank, quote, "It's a miracle these guys won any games last year as dysfunctional as this place was." So that gives you an idea of kind of what Whittingham and company walked into. He's the perfect steadying force, I think, for Michigan and can lead them for the next 4 or 5 years and kind of through a critical transitional period. But I think they're way down. Oregon and certainly Ohio State I would have well above Michigan. USC believes that it has by far its best team of Lincoln Riley's 5 seasons, now going on to 6, I guess. So all of those teams are ahead of them. Where does Penn State shake out now with Matt Campbell? What kind of first-year impact can Pat Fitzgerald have at Michigan State? Michigan State's going to be well behind Michigan, but I would have a hard time having Michigan above 4th in my own personal Big Ten rankings.
John, we appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on and hitting on a variety of topics this morning. We appreciate it.
No, grateful. I'll be at Big 12 Media Days next week in Frisco, so hope to meet some of you guys in person.
There's John Brice from USA Today. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams 4th of July sale and get 30% off paints and stains June 26th through July 6th. Whether you're refreshing your interior or exterior, we've got the colors to bring your vision to life. And with delivery, getting everything to your door is easier than ever. Shop online to have it delivered or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details. Delivery available on qualifying orders.
It's time to get your morning started with the news you need to know.
News update.
This is what's trending with DJ and PK. Hashtag Utah Jazz.
Big part of having an attitude of gratitude, being thankful for every moment, reflecting on the fact that when you were a kid, you would kill for this opportunity to be in the NBA, and not a lot of people have this opportunity, so to be thankful for that, be thankful for the people around you. Gratitude and giving thanks is like the biggest weapon against negative thoughts.
That is Walker Kessler on his mindset. His mindset was way more important to Jazz fans when he played for the Jazz. But he's been a Laker now for about 21 hours, PK.
There's 2 things I'd be grateful for if I were Walker Kessler. and that would be the 1st of the month and the 15th of the month.
Thought maybe you'd go with, being 7 feet tall. Being relatively athletic.
Yeah, but I still think you have to work at that. I mean, obviously he's 7 feet tall, so that's going to help. But I don't know, obviously a lot of people that are. But there are people who are tall who aren't good. And I don't want to discredit him for the work that he put in. And here he is, man.
Yep.
It's a business decision. I think that maybe by the Lakers making those picks available, maybe it lowers the price a little bit, because then the Jazz don't need to get in a bidding war, and the Lakers don't have to go quite as high as maybe they would have had to. So there you go. And then the Jazz pick up Jackson Hayes and see what that means as far as the center position. And position may not be as good, but you use that money available to make the team better, and that's all how it plays out.
Jackson Hayes, 2 years, $12 million, center by committee. Maybe a little bit of him, maybe a little bit of Nurkic, who's the maybe a little bit of JJJ and Filipowski. And out of the four of them, who's having a good night, who matches up, what else is happening in the game, we'll see who emerges. Competition's supposed to make everybody better, PK, so there's 4 people competing for minutes. Although one of the 4 already could have a lot of minutes playing the 4 spot, so 3.5 people competing for 1.
Jared Jackson obviously will be on the floor as much as they want him to be. The other 2 guys, the other 3, if you throw Filipowski in there, who's to see? Or who's to say, I should say. And I guess who's to see as far as who plays the position the majority of the time. And, you're not asking for a whole lot. A kid like Hayes has got a lively body. Been in the league now. He's only 26, but these kids come in so young. He's been in the league 6-7 years. See what he can do.
And to your point, there is more money to go out and get somebody else if they want. Is there still a trade coming? What about the draft picks? And more importantly, the money. It's not like money has to be spent right now. There's midseason and there's next summer when Keontae George needs to be paid. So a lot of different places to spend that money going forward. Man, Kessler, LA has got to be in win now mode, right? You got new owners you got to impress. That was probably part of the equation in this trade, is that if you're the GM and you're Pelinka and the new owners are here and they got high expectations, you got to do something. And the Jazz did get more draft picks than Jaylen Brown got in the Boston-Philly deal. But Pelinka had to make it happen now.
From the Laker perspective, just Stephen A. Smith, you hear him going to town on the 3 white guys at the top?
I didn't.
Oh, of course you didn't. I didn't think you did.
When did he do it? But he's not on for another hour.
Yesterday.
On his podcast yesterday.
Oh, on his podcast.
It was actually on Sirius XM, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he's saying, come on, what team has ever won with 3 white guys at the top?
I'll play it later.
I mean, and then he takes a shot at Utah. This is Los Angeles. This isn't Utah. He's upset about it, and then obviously the Kardashians are upset about it.
Oh, Walker Kessler's going to be in the spotlight now. Going to have to win now. The pressure increases
on everybody. That's pro sports, though.
Yep. All right, DJ and PK.
#NBA.
For this particular time, Max, it was a lot different. And I asked him, I said, listen, this is going into year 24. You don't owe anybody anything, right? You've accomplished more than any player has ever accomplished. You got every record, all the stuff. Let's find one foundational thing to build off of. And if I asked you that, what would it be? I don't need to answer now, but let's just try to find that. And so he said, okay, fine. Took a day or so, and he called me back. He said, okay, man, you know what? I just want to have complete happiness. And I said, great, let's start there.
Rich Paul and what LeBron James is looking for. Cleveland and the Warriors supposed to be the leaders here.
Complete happiness?
Yeah, good luck with that.
Oh, brother. Jeez. You're not happy enough.
A lot of money, a lot of rings. Your nickname is King.
He wants complete happiness.
Complete.
I just want to pay the mortgage.
I do believe the mortgage paying is all accomplished in LeBron James' financial world.
Oh, brother. Just add a touch. I mean, I couldn't even listen to all that.
Celtics trade Jaylen Brown to the Sixers in a blockbuster deal for Paul George, 2 first-round picks, 2028 and 2031, along with 2 second-round picks in 2028 and 2030. So there he is, right to one of the ancient rivals, Boston, Philly. I think we could see a Boston-Philly game on Christmas Day now. Lock that one in. Let's go.
Yeah, on the surface, it doesn't seem like that the Celtics got enough. It seems like Paul George, very good talent, obviously, but it looks like his better days or best days are behind him. He's been hurt a lot. What's his availability? I always thought he was a prototypical NBA athlete, lean, long, strong, can do a lot of different things for you, but hasn't been playing at that level for a while. It's bounced around. Maybe it's a situation where Jaylen Brown had become just too much of an issue with the team, and so they needed to unload him, and that was the best deal they could get. That's unfortunate from the Boston perspective. Philadelphia, he's a better player individually, gives them some firepower with Edgecombe and Maxey, but the key is still Embiid, and he's really good, but he rarely plays. So I can see why Philadelphia would want to make that move. Get a little younger. Boston, yeah, wow, man. Reading some of the reviews, they're going to be lucky to make the play-in next year. It seems a little
dramatic. Over the top of that.
Dramatic, yeah.
But they're not a champ. But you wouldn't put them on the championship tier right now. No way. Well, we can argue about how far they're going to fall, and I don't think they're going to fall to the play-in. But they're not on the championship tier. And that's even with the East being wide open and not knowing where LeBron is going to. If nothing else, it looks like Philadelphia has moved in front of Boston. And you can argue even with Embiid out, now they got 3 really good players and they can still. I don't know that they could win it all without Embiid, but they're one of the better teams in the East even if he doesn't play. The Edgecombe, Maxey, Jaylen Brown trio, that's pretty potent. I mean, how many teams in the East can match that?
Do you think it's better than Doncic, Kessler, and Reeves?
Well, Philly will score more points. I don't know how they'll defend. The Lakers ought to be better with the rim protector there. That ought to fix some stuff right away. There's stats out there on people see Kessler and they don't even want to drive in there. They don't even want to try. They turn into the jump shooting teams to drive you mad.
I thought everybody shoots threes anyway.
And I don't know that it's going to matter with the Lakers and the Sixers. They'll play each other twice. I don't think they're going to see each other in the final.
Well, yeah, but it's not one-on-one. It's just who got the better deal. I mean, this is sports talk radio. I mean,
I think Philly got the better deal of all the blockbuster moves yesterday.
And so even if they're in the same conference, they'd only play 2 more times after that.
They might see each other for 7 in the playoffs. Celtics signed Mike Conley. He gets 1 year. Mitchell Robinson goes in on a 3-year deal. Tobias Harris, 2 years, $31 million to go to San Antonio. Need a little more three-point shooting. Need a veteran with some playoff experience. So Tobias Harris.
And also, too, the Sixers and Lakers could face off in the NBA Cup in Indiana.
I did leave that out. You're right. They could be in Butler Fieldhouse. We got to focus on that. Hinkle, bring it. DJ and PK.
#NFL.
Taylor Swift, Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce having their wedding tomorrow night inside Madison Square Garden in New York. PK, sports venue. Where would you want to get married? Rose Bowl? Yankee Stadium? Or you want family there, so you'd go with the retractable dome in Phoenix?
I could tell you some stories about family in my wedding, but you wouldn't want to hear it.
I think I actually heard it.
I just want them to make sure that the thermostat is set to 78 in New York. That's the most important thing.
There it is. 80 if you leave the garden, right?
Is it 80 that high? Man.
If you're not going to be home. If you leave the garden. But yeah, 78 for you there.
Yeah. I'll set the temperature to whatever I want to set.
DJ and PK.
Hashtag Major League Baseball.
1-0. Swung on. Hit high and deep. Center field. Manga back to the track, to the wall. It's gone into the hedges. Alec Bohm, dead center field. It's his 10th of the year. It's a 2-run shot, and the Phillies now lead it 10-6 here in the bottom of the 8th.
Dansby Swanson, the batter, hits a fly ball into deep left center. Back toward the wall. Grand slam. Dansby Swanson with a grand slam to left.
Dansby Swanson, the grand slam, part of his 3-home run, 8-ribby performance in Chicago as the Cubs beat the Padres 23-3. They hit 8 home runs. How about the 4th and 7th when the Padres put goose eggs up there, huh? That was pretty sweet. 8 in the 8th. At the end of the game, the catchers pitch in and Ephus pitches and whatever. Just get out of there, get swept, and go home. Well, not go home, but go back to Southern California and play the Dodgers in L.A. Cubbies sweep the Padres.
Yeah, quite the day by Dansby.
Junior Caminero homers again. That's 8 home runs in the last 6 games. He's homered in 6 straight. The Rays beat the Royals 4-0. Junior Caminero lighting it up. Have a week.
Oh, yeah. Have a season.
Yankees have lost 7 in a row. Detroit beats them 6-2. It's the Yankees' longest losing streak since 2023.
Are you surprised they're doing this bad without Judge?
No. It's all coming back. Now they're back to being a 500 team is what they should have been. They just did it in chunks instead of bouncing back and forth every day or two. Major League Baseball Players Association, CBA talks. They talked to the league owners about increasing roster sizes from 26 to 28 for the first 15 days of the season, preventing established big leaguers from being overworked early in the season, giving more players opportunities to land on opening day rosters coming out of spring training. You like that idea, PK? Add a couple more pitchers, I guess?
Yeah, fine. I don't really care about that. If that's what they want, sure. But these negotiations now, I barely even pay attention because...
You need a deadline, and the deadline's too far away. They're going to push the deadline. We're going to be doing this in 2027. They're not going to have a deal before January 1 of 2027.
I'm afraid they're not going to have
one before
June
April 1. Oh, okay, June 1.
Yeah. But I'm fine with that. If that for just a few weeks, whatever. It would be flushed out. Basically, it'd be a wash because everybody would be doing it. No one would have an advantage over the other.
Hey, the Dodgers went with that bullpen game last night. It didn't work out. The Athletics win 7-1 in Sacramento. You ever heard of Charlie Barnes before? The guy who ended up taking the loss and giving up 6 of the 7 runs?
Chuck Barnes?
Never heard of him. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. They got enough.
I mean,
they
got enough
lose
W's.
60
games.
Yeah.
Just don't lose whatever the limit is, whether it's
3 or 4 in
less in the postseason. Yeah. So it didn't faze me.
Ohtani's scheduled to pitch. He's been pushed back to Friday night, game 2 of the 4-game series with the Padres. Bees lose to Vegas 10-6. They'll play again tonight. America First Square. Tony Park's on the air on 1280 The Zone at 6:20. DJ and PK.
Harry Kane. Still Harry Kane. Oh, my word! Majestic Harry Kane. Unbelievable. England lead 2-1.
Tielemans with the strike. Tielemans. Everyone's off the bench as Belgium leads for the first time.
Team only man there, able to steer it to Adams, flicks it along Tillman. He's got Balogun making a run off him. Can he get around to that ball? To the deflection, Balogun scores! Flo Balogun, first to react to the deflection. He'll do the LeBron celebration. It's 1-0 U.S.
The number 20 United States committee serious foul.
Yeah, it's going to be a red card.
The final decision is red card.
Wow. Look at how Vassal's giving up the entire right side of his goal. Tillman! It's in! Malik Tillman! 2-0 United States!
3 crazy games in the World Cup yesterday. The favorites win, but it was a tight battle. England gets the victory. Harry Kane scores twice in the last 15 minutes, and they pull out a 2-1 win over Congo. Senegal was up 2 goals, 85th minute. Belgium in the 86th and 89th minute to force another 30, and then a penalty right at the end of that, and Belgium escapes 3-2. And then the United States, they get the shutout, only their second shutout in the last, almost last full year, but it's the second one of the World Cup. So they're into the round of 16. But they'll be there without Phil Balogun, as you heard him pick up the red card. Harsh red, PK. Could have been a yellow easily, but it was a red, so now he's going to miss the Belgium game in Seattle on Monday. They'll have to figure it out without him as they try to get to the quarterfinals for only the second time in the modern era.
Yeah, without him. I just don't know. I was watching the game.
Yeah.
I have the DirecTV, and it wasn't available because they're having some squabble with Fox Sports, right? So I think, I got all these channels. It's got to be on something that I don't ever look at. And sure enough, I found it.
Telemundo?
Yeah.
All right.
And nothing against soccer announcers. DJ's my favorite by far.
Thank you, PK. But the Spanish worked for you, even though you weren't exactly sure what was going on? It worked?
But see, I don't really listen to announcers.
Yeah.
I watch the game. It's on, and they can say it, but I don't really pay attention to what they say. No, that's just me, and I'm not making a slant or slight against announcers, play-by-play, or analysts, or what have you.
But if you can see the ball go into the net, you don't really care what somebody yells, whether it's bang in an NBA game or goal in a soccer game. It doesn't really matter to you because you just saw the ball go in the net. Yeah.
I was watching the game with none other than Gordon Monson.
Oh, really?
Yes. And, we're talking, carrying on, watching the game. And, I mean, it is soccer, so you're not glued into every second. No offense, guys. I know the two of you just live and die it. But you can kind of casually watch it. And then if he missed the penalty kick, and I said, well, just wait a second. And they'll show it again. You'll get to see it. And the game's over, and he says, man, that coach for the U.S., he looks like Russell Crowe. And I said, yeah, I've been saying that for weeks. I said, there's got the hair, body type, facial structures. I said, yeah, he does. He goes, oh, man, I'm glad you said that because I thought I was the only one. I said, no, call Jay Catch. I told him weeks ago that the guy looks like Russell Crowe. I said, and I can't pronounce his last name, so I just call him Russell Crowe.
Are you not entertained? Spain, heavy favorites over Austria later today. PK, you've been talking about the lack of upsets. The favorites have been prevailing, with the exception of Germany. But it has been close. Portugal favored to beat Croatia. If you're looking for an upset, I'm going with Croatia, PK. Switzerland and Algeria, the third game tonight.
I'd like to go to Croatia. I understand. It's very beautiful.
I have heard that.
Yes. And where I lived in California, there was a high percentage of Croatians who lived there because the typography reminded them of the homeland.
Yes.
Hillsides with the ocean right there.
Yeah. Yeah, for all the people who think that going to Italy and going to the beach, Italy, the Mediterranean, that's fabulous. Well, right across a little sliver of water from the Italian coast, there sits Croatia with a coast of its own. So,
yeah,
visualize that. DJ and PK.
#NHL.
Utah Mammoth, an active day. They signed former Islanders captain Anders Lee, 3-year deal with the AAV of $5.4 million. They also trade defenseman Sean Durzi, forward prospect Cole Bedone, and a third-round pick to the Rangers to acquire center Vincent Trocheck, 3 years, $5.2 million AAV. So adding a couple players, and they apparently going to have to replace Barrett Hayden here. What are they going to do? The Devils have signed Barrett Hayden to an offer sheet. 1 year, $4.78 million. Utah could match it, but then they couldn't trade him, and he'd be an unrestricted free agent in a year. He's a restricted free agent right now. So what will they do there? But guys coming and guys going, an active day for the Utah Mammoth, PK.
On the surface, it looks like, they're upping the ante in the win now mode in terms of trading a prospect. Now, he wasn't the number one, number two, but last week when Bill Armstrong was mentioning guys, I believe he mentioned his name. I think that's where I heard it. And we've known of the name for sure. So it looks like get some veteran guys, get more size, that type of thing. And away they go. They're anticipating, it looks like, the possibility of not just maybe an incremental improvement, but maybe a step or two beyond that.
Coming up, we will talk with Greg Wyshynski about exactly that question at 8:30. ESPN senior NHL writer joins us then. Ben Anderson, Jazz insider for KSL Sports. Coach Jake and Ben will be here at 9 o'clock. We'll talk about all the changes with the Jazz. What's next? Walker Kessler in L.A. How's the West stacking up? Where should expectations be? We'll get to all that at 9 o'clock. As a matter of fact, I think we'll get to some of that in the rest of the 7 o'clock hour. That is What's Trending, brought to you by Shamrock Plumbing. There's no job too big or too small. Get the personal touch with Shamrock Plumbing. Question of the day is next. Stay with us.
3, 2, 1. This is Scotty G and Coach Tim LeComb.
Walker Kessler on his way. Not only the Jazz trade him, they trade him to the Lakers. A 4-year contract worth $140 million, roughly just shy of $33 million per year. The Jazz get a haul. They get 2 unprotected first-round picks, 2 pick swaps, which is a monstrous amount. A rim protector and a rebounder. An elite is now off the board for the Jazz.
In my opinion, it wasn't part of the plan. I think this is an outlier. I can just tell you, I think there's probably nuance. Numbers say one thing, but I think there's nuance. I want to make sure we talk about in the beginning that they were more than compensated. John Morant, who was just traded, and I know he has his issues, but he was just traded the other day with no first-round picks attached. This is 4 first-round picks.
Catch Scotty G and Coach weekdays from 10 to 2. Presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Walker Kessler is a Laker. The Jazz have a lot of draft picks to work with going forward, but how good are they? So many questions. What is your reaction? PK, the immediate reaction from a lot of Jazz fans is the Lakers really wanted him, and they paid a high price to get Kessler. Tavita says the Jazz front office don't play around when they're negotiating. The return they got is crazy good. Soaking the Lakers dry and then signing one of their centers right after, LOL. And also, Nephi, Jazz fleeced a desperate Laker front office in this trade. JJJ is a former Defensive Player of the Year. Ace could start now. Our team's athletic and fast. Kessler is not. We are better off now. Ooh. I disagree with the last part there, PK. Better off now? I feel like I'm going to have to back off on my expectations for 50 wins in top 6. It could happen, but it seems a lot less likely.
Well, the deal, the way I look at it, as far as the haul, which is the cliche, is like, are you you have equity in your house, and so when you go to sell it, you're going to get more money. But right now, you don't have more money in your wallet. And so the Jazz right now, I don't think they have more money in their wallet because
the money
they
in
don't
the
have
wallet,
players.
The money in the wallet
Players
would be wins and
money
players.
Now is what you want. You want the equity too, but you need the money now. And they're minus a player now, I guess, even in terms of bodies, but they could have signed Jackson Hayes if they wanted to that desperately, even with Kessler. They didn't have to sign Nurkic. I think they needed body, and he's tall and all that stuff. So and available, so they sign him real quick. I think that we'll have to see how that plays out. But they have the potential to cash in on it. But right now, they haven't cashed in on anything. And they got these picks, but if they don't use them wisely, then what difference does it make? Picks are just that until they become the actual on-the-court talent, or if you use those picks to trade for other types of things. But you'll at some point you got to get players back. You just can't keep exchanging picks for picks. So it's okay that they got these picks, but that's all they are until they're actually traded in for human beings. So we'll have to see how that works out. My guess is that these picks will also be used for other players that they can use and as draft capital and assets and all that stuff. Kessler, yeah, I don't think there's any question that he's better than the guys you have from the defensive perspective. But I think that from the offensive perspective, Kessler will be better utilized in Los Angeles than he was here with the Jazz, because the Jazz have the opportunity to really have some outstanding offensive players. And so the fact that they will miss Kessler and the ability that he can have offensively, which is emerging, I don't think will be as bad. They can offset that rather consistently, probably, I anticipate. Defensively is another story. We have to see what they can do there and how teams want to attack them in that regard.
We'll see what they do with the draft picks and how quickly they turn those into players. You know, are there more trades coming? Are there veterans? The center position just feels like this is a short-term Band-Aid, center by committee. They may prioritize other positions. It may just remain this. It wouldn't be the first team in the NBA. There's a couple of, there's a few big-time players at the very top, and then there's a lot of teams that mix and match, ham and egg it, whatever your cliche is. So they may live with that. Even though it may be different players, they swap out doing it over a fairly short period of time. Neither Hayes or Nurkic has signed long-term. So it just feels like the build continues. It's a work in progress in that area. But what do they do with that money, and what do they do with that picks to improve the team? And is that in the next week or two? Is that midseason? Is that next summer when Keontae's up and the money's going there? That'll all be interesting, because those are the assets you talk about that they have that they wouldn't have. I mean, the Lakers, now I think we pretty much see their team. How far can it go? I think they are a top 6 team in the West now. I don't think they're top 2, but somewhere in that next group where they were last year with LeBron. He's gone. Kessler's in. Some of the other role players swapping out. Feels like they use most of their assets, and you're like, the Jazz are sitting over here. All right, what are they going to do, and when are they going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, the Lakers, I think they won 53 games last year, so I don't know that they're any better.
Right.
We'll have to see how the chemistry plays out and everything on the floor. Maybe they will be better. I don't know. Well, that's up to them. We'll watch it. We're way more obsessed about the Jazz. I do think that in today's game, the way it's played, if I'm going to be weak at a position, because you can't have 5 stars out there, the salary structures and everything don't allow it.
Right.
I think that in today's game, I'd probably pick the position that the Jazz have as far as their weakness, because they look pretty solid at all the other positions on the floor, right? The other 4 spots. And so this is going to be their weakest on paper right now. We'll see how it changes or develops is probably a better word. And so with that in mind, I'm most comfortable having the weakness there to see what they can do there because they don't need that position to be prolific offensively, as I just said. Defensively, yeah. But, defense-wise, Majerus just drummed it in my head for so many years that I covered them. I covered them for a decade every day. And you got to have team defense. And so get better on the perimeter, and then maybe you don't eliminate the need for an anchor, but you can soften the blow a little bit better. And so get into that position. And as I look at the guys that are on the perimeter, they all have an opportunity. They have the athletic skills to be able to keep their man in front of them better, that type of thing. So we'll see if they can compensate for the loss of Kessler and still make it an effective defensive team, particularly in the postseason when everything is magnified. You get in January and February and whatnot, and you're on these long road trips and all, and your 100% is actually probably 65%, 70% that night because you're just gassed and you've been playing and traveling and it's winter and you don't feel well and all that stuff. So I'm not, as far as that goes, concerned regular season wise, because I think this team can get to the playoffs. And then as they develop that, what position are they in from a defensive standpoint there? And then if they make trades and so forth at the deadline, and who knows, just because what the team is when the season starts obviously doesn't mean what the team is when the postseason starts. So I think on the surface, I'd rather have Kessler. I'm not going to make any bones about it to say, oh, well, he's not that good, blah, 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 blah. It's like you lost some recruit. We didn't really want him anyway, and we got these other players. We'll be just fine. No, if there's a big-time recruit and he's choosing, now it seems to be a bunch of kids these days, for whatever reason, they're choosing between BYU and Oklahoma, of all places. If they choose Oklahoma, that's a blow to your program. Yeah, you can get other players, but it's still a blow to your program. So having him leave, in a sense, is a blow to the program. But how can they overcome it? I think they have the ability to manufacture other ways to be effective and successful.
Tom, what does this do for cap space this season and free agency? Tom wants it, and he wants it now. I don't think that's as important. I think with cap space, they're actually getting right up to the cap. But you can go over the cap to sign your own free agents, and they have quite a room before the luxury tax, and that presumably could be for Keontae George next year, or Keontae George in a sign and trade, or, we can list a whole bunch of possibilities. I don't think it's going to impact this year so much. I think what they did is we were all anticipating that they were going to run out of money in another summer or two, and now some of that pressure is off. I'm sure there'll be guys lining up for the money, and they'll, bump into the luxury tax and have all those issues again. But in the short run, that relieves this pressure, and they're going to have more money to do stuff going forward. But I wouldn't be surprised if that money is reserved for next summer, and we see what kind of year Keontae George has. To your point, the regular season's really different than the playoffs. It's very different, and we don't know how any of those guys are going to perform in that. So get some more information and then decide what you're going to do with the assets you have, whether it's cap space or draft or whatever. Let's see what these guys do. It feels like that's where this is going. I mean, they still have a couple roster spots. I think the next moves are around the edge, but, hey, they surprised us yesterday. Who's to say they won't surprise us again?
Well, I want them to be up against the cap with George because that means he's had a banner season.
Right, yeah, and he has to be paid because he delivered at a high level.
Yeah, and I think they would want that. I think the last thing they want is that he takes a major step backward. It doesn't make any sense. That would impact and hurt the team because he has the position to be a vital player as he continues to develop in his game. What is this? His fourth year? So from that perspective, yeah, go ball out, son. Continue to do what you've done and continue to progress as a human being. It seems like the arrow on that young man is just pointed sky high, and how far it goes remains to be seen. But it's one of the storylines because he was impressive to watch last year. And so what do we've got going here? How does it mesh? That's the thing about what we've been watching with these young dudes is that everything has been sort of an individual watch. Now it's going to be a team watch. When you're not playing to win, it is just about the individuals. And so Sensabaugh can come off the bench and go 10 of 15 or maybe start that game, whatever it might be. Okay, well now how effective can you be in your role? I mean, one of the most effective guys in their roles that they've ever had, obviously, was Hornacek, right? He came over and was effective in his role, and that made the team way better. It was clear. We saw it. For those of you who are too young, yeah, we all saw it. That's what it was. So how can you be effective in a winning environment rather than basically what we've had the last few years has been an individual environment? Right? Oh, man, he looked good tonight. Well, if he looks good and you don't win, well, big deal. How can they look good together? That's what I want to see. And that's going to be the fascinating part to see this unfold in this season.
DJ and PK, we got people who think the trade should have never happened. They're fans. They're saying that with emotion. We'll get into that next. Stay with it. DJ and PK, the question of the morning. Walker Kessler is gone to the Lakers. What do you think? Your reaction, Daryl. You never make a trade with the Lakers, no matter if it's a good trade or a bad trade. Well, PK, you're not going to get very far in the NBA wearing your fandom on a sleeve like that in the front office. Wasn't that last trade they made where they dumped a bunch of people that I don't even think most Jazz fans can ever even remember for a first-round draft pick? Wasn't that a good idea?
Well, I think on the premise, though, the idea is you don't trade with your rival to make them a better team. I think that's where he's going with. I mean, that's a storyline that's been out there forever.
Yeah,
that's why you
Philly,
brought
Boston
up
yesterday.
The fact, you brought that up because they have been rivals. Having lived back there, I can attest to it. And even if you didn't live back there, you know it full well. So I think there's something to be said for that. You don't trade someone within your own division. You don't trade someone within your own conference. So I understand what he's saying about that. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but that is a theory. If you're going to make a team better, make some team better at the other side of the country. And then you don't have to worry about them outside of a select regular season games until the postseason, right? I mean, there's that theory there that's the case. On the other hand, the flip side was you got to take the best deal. And it's clear that the Lakers had the money to target Kessler. So I think in this case, and they had the need, that if you're going to make a deal, there was no way that it was going to be anybody but the Lakers. And so you have to do that. What's there? My guess is if they had their druthers, maybe they wouldn't have wanted to make a deal with the Lakers. Make it with Sacramento, which seems to get in the way of itself all the time for decades outside of a few Vlade, Weber, Mike Bibby run and Stokovich and those guys. And that seems in the span of time, that was a great run for Sacramento. But if you take a broad view, my gosh, they have sucked for so many years and are so poorly run.
Mark says, I hate to see Kessler go, but at those numbers, I'm glad the Jazz didn't match. In a salary cap league where you only have so much money, you got to choose wisely how you spend it on. Mark, I get it. At those numbers, I thought they were going to match because I thought the worst outcome was the Gordon Hayward outcome where he leaves and you don't get anything for him. That was the worst outcome. So I thought they'd sign him and try to make the best of it. Well, in a way, that's what they did. It's just I thought they were going to be doing it further in the future. I didn't know the Lakers would give up 4 draft picks. I didn't see that coming, but that goes back to how motivated are the Lakers.
Draft picks.
The possibility of 4. You're right. There's 2 draft picks unprotected gone, and then there's 2 more swaps. We'll see how they are in the standings and see how they are in the draft order. Anthony's disappointed. He says, I really wanted to see that big 3 lineup on the floor. That would have been hell for teams to score in the paint. I do like now that we could move Ace to the starting lineup if we want. We're still plenty deep. Nurk isn't the rim protector that Kessler is, but he's strong. He plays physical with the other bigs. The Jazz are a better team with Walker, but they're still a really good deep team without him.
I don't know how deep they are. That's another fascinating development to see how deep they are. And who of these youngsters really can contribute? They'll all have reduced roles. These draft picks that they've had that they've kept because they've traded a couple. And so I can't speak to their depth. There's a possibility, but how do I know they're going to be there when the lights are brighter and everything is more magnified? And Locke has talked about this extensively. If they made mistakes, it was like, yeah, well, ho-hum. It didn't really matter. Well, now when the stakes are extremely high, that the mistake becomes more magnified, and what level of mistakes and frequency do they make them, and how do they handle reduced roles? Even starters, Keontae George, I don't think he's going to have the freedom to shoot as much as he has, right? Because you've got some prolific guys on this team now,
and they need shots.
You've got the 2 big dudes need to be featured because they're far more proven than anybody else on this team. Obviously, and they're really good and they can make shots virtually anywhere on the offensive side. And so you cannot just waste their talents. At the same time, George needs to blossom. How good can he be? And then you got this Darren Peterson over here, and we see, which is not surprising to me, he's in the gym shooting, and he's making a high percentage of his shots. When Locke made that statement on our show during the last season that Ace Bailey could be the leading scorer and the number one option by February, well, so could Darren Peterson. Because right now, if I'm choosing a perimeter player who's the best, it's Darren Peterson, and he hasn't played 1 second of NBA basketball, and the other guys have, but that's the skill level that I believe this young man has. So how does this package and puzzle all come together, and what do these role players do in their more reduced roles, but still, I could argue reduced roles, but nevertheless more important roles than what they've had, because the goal is winning, and all that stuff is to be discovered. This is a big time season of discovery for this team. And the good thing is they can do it, discover, while still playing winning ball.
The season of discovery. Look at you just helping out Jazz marketing time and time again. No, in all seriousness, I think that's a great slogan for it, because you've got to discover what these guys can do when the team wants to win. We saw them play a lot, but we did not see them play a lot in the last 5 minutes when it really mattered. And they were a horrible defensive team. And there is, at least in my mind, and we've seen it with a couple of the commenters here, there is a bit of disappointment, because that was going to be I think, we'll never know now, I think that was going to be an awesome defensive team. They were really going to squeeze some teams. To have the defensive player of the year playing next to a shot-blocking 7-footer, combined with the fact that they were going to have some guys who were big and athletic out on the perimeter, Peterson should be a good defender. Ace should be a good defender. And they've got shot blockers behind them. That could have been really good, and that would have led to some wins. How many? We can always debate, and now it's going to look a little different. To your earlier point, it doesn't have to look bad. There should still be an expectation, and that's a season of discovery. You could try to stay in front of your guy, regardless of who's playing behind you. Yeah, you don't have Kessler. Right. That's one more good thing. But it's still your job to stay in front of your guy. Man, and Tom Nasalki used to complain all the time doing those pre-half and post-game shows, the late Tom Nasalki, and he'd complain all the time about all this talk about rotations. What happened to shutting down your guy? What happened to taking it personally? What happened to just stay between your man and the basket? What happened to that? Well, partly the whole league started copping Jerry with the pick and roll. Even if you do stay in front of your guy, okay, they'll bring someone over here and run into you with a 300-pounder, and now you're in the scramble anyway. So how will these guys handle the scramble?
Yeah,
I mean, all that stuff you heard from Majerus, it was not only stay in front of your guy, but the guy next to had to come over and help, and then one of the bigs had to get to the rim. So it was always 3 people who had to be beaten, and if they gave up a layup or dunk, he went nuts. Now, granted, that's the college game, and the spacing's different than the pro game, and the three-point shot has changed, but those basic principles, they still matter. They still matter. So it's a season of discovery. Who can do it and who can't? And we're going to find out.
I think the rules have been changed dramatically. I can't ride you on the hip like they used to. They've gone the NFL route and freed up the offensive player, which they should, because that's what it's an entertainment product, and that's what fans want. You want to see the 6'5" guy come down and glide and take off like he is elevating or levitating in the air, because these guys from the basketball sense have enormous athletic ability, and that's fun to watch, and that's what we want, and that's why we turn on the TV. That's why we go to the games. And so from that perspective, I support the rule changes rather than riding guys and hip checking them to slow them down and all that stuff. So it's harder than it's ever been to stay in front of your guy. At least don't just olay it and like you're some type of bullfighter who just going and waving the red cape and he just storms down the lane. Don't do that. That's what you can do. But let's see what this Hayes can bring to this team, because if you want to get on the floor and you want another NBA contract, just defense and rebound. And if you get a couple of putbacks, just go do that.
be a far cheaper poor man's Gobert in the offensive set and the defensive set. Do what you can do, and maybe they can patchwork it a little bit there. And with Jaren Jackson, use his skills. And let's see what Markkanen has, man. This is Markkanen's time to be on the clock. You know, you've made enormous amounts of money with pretty much no pressure whatsoever. Well, all that's got to change.
Oh, it's
you got to
changing.
be out there.
Yep.
You got to be in uniform. You got to play 30 minutes a game. You got to be available on what is termed as reasonable these days, which isn't 82. We all understand that. But, man, you have been paid like a big-time player, and now you have to produce big time.
He's got to lead them to the playoffs, PK. Lead them. Not be a passenger while they get there. He needs to lead them to the playoffs.
Well, I mean, does he need to lead or co-lead? That's something we can discuss.
Okay, we'll get to that next. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. DJ PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. All right, we were just talking about the Jazz, reaction to the Kessler deal. They can still be a playoff team. 50 wins, top 6. That seems like a much bigger ask than it seemed like 48 hours ago. But nonetheless, that's where we are. And we were just talking about these guys' ability to improve. And for Markkanen, you were talking about a lot of things he had to do. You know, play more games, score points, lead. And I just summed it up with he's got to lead him to the playoffs. You gave him co-lead. If he co-leads because somebody else steps up their game, and not only can we live with that, I think that's what we all want to see. Whether it's hard to lead when you're not one of the better players. So if whoever it is, if someone steps up their game and we look back and say, well, they had a couple of guys who really led them to the playoffs. Well, as long as you're there, I mean, I'm fine with that. Let's not mess up the development of somebody else who's ready to take a bigger role and step forward. And maybe it's a younger guy who's doing it way young and will just get us super excited about the next decade. Maybe it's Jackson, who's obviously the most accomplished guy on the roster. But whoever, I can live with that, PK, but when you're getting paid that much money, you're expected to carry a certain percentage of the load. He's getting paid a lot of money, so he's expected to carry a lot of the load.
Oh, there's no question about that. But I don't think Jackson needs to step up his game. I believe he needs to do what he can do. He's the best player on the team right now, today. We'll see how that progresses during the course of the season, but he's an enormous talent, and he's, in my mind, he's better than Markkanen, and that's taking nothing away from Markkanen because he's got all sorts of skill. But I think Jackson right now today is the best player on the team, and the good thing about it is there is no clear, obvious number one option. If you want to be the number one option, if that's important to you, as apparently it was to Jaylen Brown, which I think that gets in the way sometimes of winning. And look at the result. You got shipped out of town. I'm not really so concerned about that. But do your thing and be a great teammate in a winning basketball concept and structure that you have going on. And so we'll see who is available to be the number one, or do they need that? Is it a team that is built around some highly skilled players and take advantage of those? Because if you can get that might be better than a clear number one. Because if that clear number one is just that, but in the ranking of the NBA, he's only in the top 20, top 25 of the league, you're probably not going to be very good. Now, if your clear number one is top 5, top 10, that's another story. And so I'm not sure I can put any of these guys in that category, but together, can they overcome the lack of a true big-time bona fide face of the league superstar? They have that possibility because they have a lot of individual guys that are very talented and they can come together collectively and they can beat you that way. And in the final analysis, that's what matters is, did you win? Not how many points Joe Blow scored or what have you, but did you win? We got to get past that. And I think you and I and Yak, we are past that. It's going to be, did you win last night? Did you win tonight? What's it going to be
tomorrow night and so forth. And so that's how they're going to be judged, by their record. And as a fan, that's exactly what I want. I want to see if they won or lost, and not buts. The point differential shows this or that, and whatever. I want, did you win? Your record is going to reflect. Who was it? You're judged by your record. Hasn't been multiple coaches have said that, particularly in the NFL. And sure, you can have injuries and all that stuff, and some guys get fired, and it's a head scratcher. Look no further than last year with Tom Thibodeau taking the team to the conference final for the first time in X amount of years, and he got fired. And it turned out, wow, they had hired Mike Brown, and I don't know if it was Mike Brown or whatever it was, but they won the title, and that's what everybody wants. So that's how they're going to be judged. And so maybe they do have 2 or 3 players that on a given night will be the man. And if they won, then it works.
I do think way more teams have won when they've had one of the top 5 or 10 players in the league.
I understand that. But if you don't have that, what are you going to do? You can't just throw in the towel and say, screw it, we don't have it.
Yes. And what happens is you can win with a collective to a certain level. And then as you start to win, whether it's the media or it's NBA players, talking, somebody gets elevated. And then someone like, well, they're winning a lot. We'd better give them a representative in the All-Star game. And so it gets created. Now, when you pull the collective apart, all of a sudden the star player can't do what he used to do. And you could pick any of the recent NBA champions, right? The best player gets elevated and gets discussed as one of the top 5 or 10 players, but then you find out they don't have that group, that collective around them, and now they're, whether it's Milwaukee or Denver or Toronto or whoever else, like Golden State, you can go on down the list, when they don't have the players around them, okay, Steph Curry's awesome, the Joker's awesome, but how far are you really going? So maybe there'll be a player who eventually gets the credit, but maybe they get too much credit, just like sometimes you get too much blame, because maybe the collective was more important all along. So don't get too hung up in that. Right now, you don't have anyone who's going to be identified as that. But if the group wins, somebody might get identified in that, even if it's oversold. So to your point, win with what you've got. That's what we really care about. That's what people care about when they walk into the Delta Center on any given night, or when they sit down and watch on TV, or they're driving up and down the road with Locke. Locke, give me the score. Are they winning? And Locke's breaking down whatever he's breaking down during the game. But it comes back to the winning. If you win, they'll enjoy however they did it. Whether it's a team that's leaning more on defense, which, with Kessler, that looks like it's going to be a little harder to do. Or you're leaning on offense, just get the W and then get the next one.
Sure. And those examples that you just gave, the teams that you listed, they all won the title.
Yep.
And Denver didn't back it up. Milwaukee didn't back it up. But when you've never been there, let's get one, and then we'll worry about backing it up if you get that one. I mean, that's and Toronto you threw in there too. They got the one. And then go from there. None of those 3, the Warriors obviously backed it up, but the other 3 didn't. But hey, things happen. But at least you got the one. Nowitzki will be a hero forever in Dallas.
Got the one.
They got it.
How about Jalen?
They got it, man.
Jalen Brunson in New York. Maybe they back it up. Maybe they don't. But he got the one. He's on a very short list of little guys who are able to pull it off and win the whole thing. And did they do it with the collective? Legendary. Is he one of the top 5 or 10, or was it really about the collective? You can argue that stuff all day long, and meanwhile, they're getting a ticker tape parade. So, woohoo!
Well, I think what we'll see with Jalen Brunson, if he wants it, he will be his generation's Walt Frazier, who has been all these years revered in the New York area.
Yeah, and not just New York. We've seen him walk into the Jazz media room. When the Knicks are in town. I mean, he is – you can't help but take your eye – I mean, you got to look at him. You can't take your eyes off him. He's Walt freaking Frazier. Come on.
Oh, yeah, he was my guy as a kid.
Yeah.
He was – I'd go out in the playground and try to mimic Walt Frazier. He was the coolest thing ever at the time when I was 10 years old. And Brunson has that opportunity. Somebody here, did they have that? Remains to be seen. Let's see what they can do. That's and sure, on paper right now, they don't have one of the top 5, one of the top 10. All right. And those are the most precious guys to acquire and the hardest to acquire because they are so rare. Every team has a best player and a player who's making the most amount of money, which by the average person is an obscene amount of money, right? Darren Peterson is going to get $61 million guaranteed. AJ DeBonsa, I think the way that's structured is like 69. That is incredible amounts of money for someone who's never played. And I don't care if he's taxed out the yin yang. It's still an incredible amount of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you don't have that, well, what you have had these last few years has not been good. So get to that 45 win plateau and see how many games you have left. Can you get to that 50 win plateau? Where do you plateau? Well, let's get there. Let's enjoy the ride of getting there. And then it's like a repeat of when they drafted the statues. They hadn't made the playoff for a number of years, and they throw Thurl in the mix, and away they go. And I wasn't here at the time, but I've spoken to so many people how exciting it was for that team to break through and then go from there. And let's break through, and then we'll see where do they go from there. But I'm going to enjoy the ride of getting to that breakthrough rather than be looking, okay, they've plateaued 47 wins, 48, 51, but they're out in the second round. I want to enjoy home playoff games in the Delta Center because we haven't had that. And then see, that's up to the management and up to the individuals and the coaching staff to make the team better from that point on. But let's enjoy the ride where they're from where they are right now to getting to that point. And maybe I'm looking at it from old man perspective, and I don't have as much more. I don't have 10 years in the business left, so I want to enjoy it right now.
Nope, I don't. I think that right now you are a man of the people. You are speaking for the upper bowl people you used to speak about, but quite frankly, I think you're speaking for the lower bowl people and the luxury box people as well. Jazz fans go there, even when they're tanking, and they want to see a win, and they want to have a good time. I think they'll enjoy the ride. There was a lot of griping outside the arena, but having been in the arena for a lot of games over the last 4 years, I can tell you there were a lot of people enjoying the ride. They didn't worry about the standings, no matter how much I told them about them the next morning. They just wanted to win that night, even if it was going to cost them a place in the draft lottery. And as it turned out, I only got Darren Peterson because they did lose that one extra game and tie Sacramento and win the coin flip and then end up number 2. So every loss mattered, and nonetheless, people were in there enjoying each individual win. And on the nights they lost, just enjoying the possibility of a win. So I think they will enjoy the ride. It's how a lot of people roll. You could see it and hear it. Here's another one for you.
They should.
There are also a lot of smart fans out there. Brad, who clearly watches the NBA. I always talk about, is this a Jazz town or an NBA town, right? Brad clearly watches everything. He says, center by committee for the Jazz this year. Well, that's the way the Celtics have made deep playoff runs and the way they've won championships. Brad, that is what we once had a producer refer to as a true fact. I don't know what other kind of facts there are, but it's a true fact. And then how about this one from Landon? The difference between Kessler and Hayes is roughly $27 million a year. As a Jazz man, I'm good with that. Can you get 60% of the money, 60 or 70% of the performance and only pay 20% of the money and then spend the rest of that money somewhere else to help the ball club? And not necessarily today, maybe midseason, maybe next summer when Keontae's up. Maybe another move will present itself. But when you can get 50, 60, 70% of the production for 20 or 30% of the money, hey, you're onto something.
And I think you have to do that in the world of the NBA. Yes. You have to have guys overachieve their contracts in order to be good. I don't know if Hayes can do that. I'd like to think so, but I'd rather be, when I make forecasts or predictions, I tend to be more conservative rather than going over the top. And I want to see how he fits in. I want to see what his mind's. Now I understand he put out some social media in terms of basically, I didn't see it, but I heard about it. Let's go. I'm ready to work, whatever it is. I mean, so far in the initial, just
hint of what his mindset is, it seems to be positive, because unless you're an idiot, okay, this is a pretty good situation to come in. They need your services. And if you ball out, you're going to be out on the floor, and then you're going to make more money. And you're going to be in an environment in which is winning, and winning. Everybody wants to win. Nobody wants to lose. It's just a fact. It doesn't matter what it is. And so I'm excited about to see, but I don't know what he can give you. If he can give you that, as you were saying, that reduced cost and correlated to the level of production that he would get for Kessler, okay, remains to be seen. I get all that.
Jared's all about Nurkic. He averaged 11 points and 10 boards. That's what Kessler averaged the full year he played. I think it's about 6s. At least it's not worth $20 million more to keep Kessler. Yeah, but about the defensive end, those stats don't capture both ends of the floor. No. We're on the same page there.
I mean, Nurkic can do what he can do.
Right.
And he's 31, 32 years old. He's been in the league a long time. There's a place. He was blessed with an enormous body, and he worked at his skill. And so he's had a place in the league now for a number of years. But let's not try to
overstate it.
Or in a sense, okay, I'm gonna rip Kessler and compare him to Nurkic just on raw stats. Don't do that.
I'm going to pump up my guy as long as he's my guy, and then tear him down when he leaves. I think the thing with Nurkic is, as they look for combinations of players who play, I think the first thing we have to see is him playing alongside Jackson. I mean, that's playing him alongside anybody else, you start wondering about how small that team is and how much they're going to get attacked. Jackson's a 7-footer. He's a shot blocker. He doesn't necessarily need to go body up the biggest, toughest guy on the other team, right? There's some body types he's just not going to match up with. I do think Jackson can play some center. Let's see who the opponent is that night and what lineup they have on the floor at the time. So I think it's going to be center by committee, and he'll be in the mix. But on any given night, you might be a little less excited about him playing a 5. It's not going to be a steady diet of that. Right.
What the matches are.
Every night and every quarter and right.
You spoke about somebody, I think you read a response there about how Boston did that. Well, I can argue that the Oklahoma City Thunder did that too. They weren't having a prolific big guy. And I also believe that Jackson all of a sudden didn't look at his phone and saw, oh my gosh, Kessler's gone and the team I'm on is getting the draft picks. I would have to believe there was some type of communication all along the way. Okay, Jaron, we're going to do this because this is what we're going to do with you. And how do you feel about that? And what are your thoughts on, okay, if we don't match because of, we got Count coming up, blah, 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 but we got you right now, and you can help. Your versatility can really help us. I have to believe there was conversation along the way, and there was some form of a sign-off on this by Jaren Jackson. Maybe I'm totally up in the night, but I'd have to think that Austin Ainge has been and Ryan Smith is usually there on the floor. You see pictures of him on the floor while players are working out around the periphery of the court, and there have been conversations to keep him abreast of what is going on, because he's a valuable, critical piece. Underscore that 3 times, because I think it's true. And so he's fully aware of what his role is going to be going into this season.
I think there was a ton of conversations there, and I think the reason people around the NBA have an idea, because Austin isn't going to go out, nor is anybody else running a team, and say, hey, here's what we're thinking, so in that case, here's where you fit in. It works backwards. He starts talking to agents like, and once Nurkic got the deal, that was a much bigger red flag, and I should have made a big deal out of that. How much are they going to pay the center position? Once they gave Nurkic that much money, and then if somebody, if you're representing another player and you get contacted and your guy's going to be in the $6 million range, you could start figuring out, all this stuff about Kessler must be true, because they just signed that guy, and now they're talking about this guy over here. People know they're putting feelers out, and everybody isn't given all the pieces of the puzzle, but sometimes you can figure it out, and conversations absolutely happen because they are working on a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And I think one reason because they've shortened these NBA contracts so much, it is hard to keep the championship together. It's not like people have forgotten how to do it. It's just there are now desperate teams that have cap room that will come in and overpay your second, third, fourth, fifth best player. You may be able to keep your star, but can you keep the talent around him? Because there's always somebody who's desperate. And we can talk about this with Ben at 9 o'clock. I just think there's clearly desperation in L.A. You're the GM hired by the previous owner. Now there's a new owner. You got to make sure your team's pretty good or you're going to be out in about 5 minutes. So he made the best deal possible. The pressure was on. The Jazz read that, and they got back potentially way more in the draft than we thought they would. To get 2 picks and the opportunity to flip 2 on top of that for a third and a fourth one, we'll see how it plays out. I don't think any of us were talking about getting that kind of haul for Kessler. But they got it. But there was pressure on the other guy. But there's always pressure on somebody in the league. They're always going to be trying to overpay and get some talent and get better. There's always somebody willing to do it. Man, they can pick apart Denver or Milwaukee or Utah or whoever. They're going to come for you.
Yeah, the thing that I like is that I don't think this decimates the team, and it gives them more flexibility, and you need that. You've got to be able to be light on your feet, so to speak, in today's NBA world and pro sports world, I mean, at least in the ones aside from baseball until they get that salary cap. And so with that in mind, too, they're not burying the future. When I hear that the Lakers don't control a pick and you start the first number is going to be 20 and that third number is a 3. That makes me really weird. And I don't really care about the Lakers, but just it makes me nervous on the surface of any team that does that, because you can't. It's such a critical balancing act that you can't destroy the future for the present unless you are odds on overwhelming favorite to win it all. And if you win 2 or 3 titles, fine. But I don't see that. I don't think there's any guarantee on any. As we know, we've had 8 different ones here. And so with that in mind, that's scary. And the Jazz have put themselves in the position to win at least minimally at a decent level in the short term without sacrificing the flexibility and the possibility of being good down the line.
James says they should trade for Walker Kessler in the future because he's awesome. He'd be a great fit, and the Lakers are going to need to move him one day because they don't have any draft picks. They're going to have to flip Kessler for draft picks down the line.
Switch it right back. No. Well, if that's the case, then get Gobert back.
See? All right, DJ and PK, when we come back, you know who's making moves? The Jazz are making moves, and the Mammoth are making more of them, and faster. They are switching things up. It was a busy day. It's been a very busy week. Greg Wyshynski, ESPN senior NHL writer, joins us next. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We are joined now by Greg Wyshynski, ESPN senior NHL writer. Greg, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us again.
It's my pleasure. It's been an interesting 24 hours. I went into Bristol yesterday expecting to cover free agency, and it ended up being the trade deadline. So it was kind of crazy how that all worked out.
The Utah Mammoth are making a lot of moves, and it looks to me like they're trying to thread the needle here. It looks to me like the priority is we have a lot of good young prospects, and we think we can be really good 5, 6, 7 years down the line. And that seems like that's the top line priority. But I think they've assessed the minors, and they're like, we have too many prospects for the roster down the road. So as a second priority, we're going to be aggressive in trying to improve the team right now. And they moved a prospect yesterday to get a guy, and people, he's 32. Yeah, well, if that bugs you, guess what? He's going to be 33 later this month. But it looks like that. Do you think that they have enough prospects to accomplish both of these things? And I think that's still the order they're trying to accomplish them. But can they thread that needle and do both and make this team much better now, make it competitive, while still preserving the ability to be an excellent club 5, 6, 7 years down the road?
Yeah, I think the thing for me in talking to Bill Armstrong over the years is he knows how deep the pool is for prospects, and he's got an incredible deep pool. I mean, at one point in the last year, he had a top player, it's seemingly in every level hockey, whether it's Canadian Junior or the NCAA or wherever. It's pretty remarkable. And so, the balance you have to strike is how many of those guys do you want to ante up in trades that make you better immediately, and how many do you want to hold on to as the next wave? I mean, obviously, like, for example, most of the league is hot to acquire TJ Ginla, but that's a guy that I think the Utah Mammoth see as a central piece of everything they're building going forward, unless something really knocks their socks off. So Cole Baudouin, who sent over to the New York Rangers, is exactly the kind of prospect you'd expect to see them move right now. He's good. He's got size. He could end up being Vincent Trocheck, only bigger down the line in his career. But they can afford to move him for a guy that can help you right now. And like I wrote on ESPN in grading the trade, which I liked for Utah, like Trocheck does so many things for you that a team that fancies itself as a contender needs, and the cost of acquisition was solid for them.
All right, you used the word contender. For the first couple years, it was contend for the playoff, and they achieved that. And then you listen to Bill talk, and he's talking about when they go up against Vegas, it was clear that they had an older, more experienced team. So go ahead and address that. And you list their prospects, and the one they gave up is on the list of prospects, but he's not at the top. You already listed the top player, and there's a couple other guys too. So with that in mind, when you use the word contender, are you talking about a contender for the final?
I mean, a conference final.
Okay.
Let's be incremental here. I mean, listen, the West is a really tough grind, but this is a team that made the playoffs. They pushed Vegas pretty well in that series, and they were able to identify, okay, the kids are great, and there'll be more of them. But now we have to kind of start surrounding them with some veterans that are not only good at what they do, but also exude leadership in situations that require it. So, Anders Lee was a captain. Vincent Trocheck was, without question, one of the biggest leaders on the Rangers in their locker room. I wrote a story about him a couple of years ago. He was the guy who would invite the entire team over to a big Italian dinner at his parents' place in Pittsburgh when they were on the road. Like, he's that kind of guy. And so not only do you have players that sacrifice on the ice and give it everything they have to win, but you also have players that are just quality individuals behind the scenes, bring a lot of leadership and bring a lot of veteran savvy, which is great in tough situations like a playoff series, but also great just as a model for the younger players to know how to carry themselves and know how to react to situations.
Do you see any potential missteps, or do you think they hit home runs, or is there a little problem out there, a little speed bump in the way?
My concern about the Trocheck deal, and I'll say this before I praise him, is he is older. He's going to turn 33 soon, and I also think that one of the drawbacks of trying to in acquiring him to fill a role in the middle of your lineup is that it doesn't address the reality of the Western Conference, which is that all of these teams have big centers, and centers that you've got to deal with, whether it's Thomas Hertl with the Golden Knights, whether it's Leon Draisaitl with the Oilers. Obviously we know McKinnon is built like a truck for Colorado. And so Trocheck's not a big guy. He plays big. He plays with a lot of tenacity and a lot of heart, but he's not a big guy. So from a acquisition kind of roster building standpoint, that was one of my concerns. But again, like the upside of Trocheck, assuming that he can kind of recapture a little bit of the offensive magic he lost on a pretty bad Rangers team last year, is that he's able to play a number of different roles. He could be your top line second line center. He can play the wing. He can kill penalties like we saw when he won the gold medal for Team USA in Italy. He can be on the power play. He's good on faceoffs. Like, there's just so many things that he brings to a lineup, and a diversity of skill and a comfortability playing different roles that I think makes him a great pickup, not only now, but towards the end of his contract.
How about the aside from these moves that they made here most recently, the move the other day of acquiring a goaltender in Sebastian Cossa? What do you think of that one?
Oh, I like it. Kosa's a guy who just never seemed to find traction within the Red Wings organization. He was always tagged as being a goalie of the future, and then despite having some pretty bad goaltending, they've never really called upon him to be as such. And so, listen, Vejmelka obviously is the guy. He's earned this right. He's played extraordinarily well and in some cases carried the Mammoth during stretches. But to have Casa as the understudy, to have him kind of ease into this role, goalies are tough to figure, boys. It's not an exact science. It's not like in the NFL when you draft a quarterback and you're pretty sure after 2 years of holding the clipboard that they're going to be able to come in and play. Like, goalies kind of pop at different times, and sometimes a guy that's drafted to be your franchise guy when he's 21 doesn't really find that until he's 26 or 27. I mean, we just saw it with Brandon Bussey, right, with the Carolina Hurricanes, a guy who, broke into the league late and then ended up winning a Stanley Cup. So I like the move. I like the investment. And then, it's worthy to see if it could pan out where he could be the guy eventually for them.
The Devils signed Mammoth forward Barrett Hayton to a 1-year, $4.78 million offer, and you're already laughing. Go ahead.
Well, so first of all, I'm a Devils fan, so it's cheeky for me to see them do an offer sheet because, I mean, they've got a new general manager, and he's being aggressive, and I dig it. And I also enjoy the fact that it seems kind of spiteful. From everything I've read, the Devils and Mammoth had a deal in place around the draft. It didn't come to fruition, and then the Devils tender this offer sheet, which, if the Mammoth match it, means they've got to keep Hayden on the roster for a full year because they can't trade him, and which walks him right up to unrestricted free agency. But Steve Weir, who is a former front office guy, I don't know if you guys saw this morning. He said, surely a coincidence the offer sheet from the Devils would cost more than a second-round pick if it was just a little higher than $4.775 million. How much higher, you ask? $666. So the Devils GM worked a 666 Easter egg into the offer sheet that he gave Hayden, and I got to respect it. I mean, it's pretty great.
I think that teams get in a position where they tend to be a little safe. They got a decent thing going on. And I wonder, if you want to take that next step or two, you've got to be bold. So in these flurry of deals, would you describe what Bill Armstrong has done as bold?
No, I wouldn't describe it as bold. I would describe it as smart asset management. The Anders Lee coming in 5.4. That's an aggressive average annual value, and maybe a year longer than you want to go for a guy who's 35. But it's not super aggressive. I mean, it's just a smart addition of a guy that can play in front of the net and bring some leadership. And in the case of Trocheck, I mean, we all know what they have on the blue line already with the players that are there. They can afford to give up Durzi. We know what's coming in the pipeline behind him. So you're dealing from a position of strength there. And then obviously, like I said, the prospect they give up is one who maybe is in their top 10, but not necessarily like someone they're counting on to really be a frontline player for them. So it's not as if he pushed his chips in with any of the blue chip guys that they have in the organization to really take a swing for a superstar center or anything like that. I think it's smart moves for a GM who knows that he's holding a lot of cards right now that are going to, he can play or hold on to, and they're going to be good NHL players, but also knows that his team deserves to be rewarded for having made the playoffs last year with a little bit of veteran help. And that's exactly what I think Trocheck and Anders Lee bring.
So what's he going to do with Barrett Hayton? Is he going to match? Is he going to let him walk? What's the smart play there?
I mean, typically the smart play is probably to let him walk, if we're being honest, because as valuable as he can be to this lineup, the idea that you can't move him if you need to is sort of frustrating, and having him get walked right up to unrestricted free agency. But, typically when we see offer sheets in this league, and we haven't seen a lot of them, the reaction is usually the team matches. And I think the expectation is that the team's going to match, only because you don't want teams to start trying to raid your cupboard if they think that they can. But this was fun. This is aggressive. This is exactly what we thought we'd see in this offseason in the NHL, because as everybody watched yesterday, the free agent frenzy did not feature a lot of guys that really move the needle or players of a certain age that you'd want on your roster. The only way to acquire those players is by trade or by offer sheet. And so maybe there's a little bit of spite behind this one, as we've mentioned before with the Devils, but it's the kind of aggressive move that I think this won't be the last offer sheet we see in the offseason.
I don't think there's any maybe. I mean, when you put a 666 Easter egg in there, I mean, that just seems like spite. That seems like which finger. I mean, I don't know what the backstory is with those two, but right now I'm assuming there is one.
Here's the backstory. Sonny Maeda, the Devils GM, he used to be a poker pro, and also he's from Jersey. So this is just him speaking his native tongue, this spitefulness that he's delivering to Bill Armstrong.
Why the spite?
Okay, Greg.
Why the spite?
Why the spite? Oh, it's the Jersey attitude. That's all it is. All right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, Greg. I'm from New Jersey. My mother, full-blood Italian, born and raised in West Orange. And you spoke of that big Italian dinner in Pittsburgh. In order for it to be successful, I think the most important thing you need to have is the quality of the meatball. If the meatball tastes like my mother's meatballs, then I'm okay with the rest. But in order for it to grade out as an A+, don't you agree the quality of the meatball is where it's at?
My mom makes killer meatballs too. Now, she's Irish, so that can only go so far.
Okay, my father's really Irish, so I'm okay there.
Yeah, so there you go. So she loads them up with enough garlic where sometimes it's painful afterwards after you eat them, which I think is exactly how it should be. For me, and I noticed this last night as I was giving my kids some pasta for dinner, I realized that the quality of cheese is very important. The only cheese I had in the house was like that prepackaged, one that you get from the grocery store. It's not like freshly cut. And I put it on her pasta and I tasted it. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like I just gave you shredded cardboard, basically. I felt really bad. But I mean, I think the quality of cheese is also an underrated aspect of the family meal.
Well, now I'm getting hungry. Greg, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks for coming on the show again. The Mammoth keep making moves, and we need you to keep coming on and telling us all about them. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Sure thing. Anytime. Thanks.
Greg Wyshynski, you can read him at ESPN.com, senior NHL writer. DJ and PK, Ben Anderson, Jazz insider for KSL Sports, will join us at the top of the hour. Walker Kessler to the Lakers. Where do the Jazz go from here? Where do the Lakers go from here? We'll talk with Ben about that coming up. Stay with us.
Welcome to This is Jay Scott and Ben Anderson.
The Jazz are worse today than they were yesterday. The Jazz are not better without Walker Kessler. The Jazz made a trade for Jaren Jackson Jr. to ideally compete for the playoffs this season. That is less likely than it would have been had they had Walker.
So the Jazz are a little worse on paper as a roster. Check. But did they overpay the wrong guy?
No.
No, they did not.
Which we have learned today is maybe the single worst thing you can do in the NBA.
By overpaying the wrong guy. And they did not. Now, the Jazz probably, I'm guessing, offered what they were comfortable offering, or probably pretty close in the 28-29, and honestly, probably didn't want to go much higher.
We would rather lose Walker at that number with 2 draft picks and swaps versus have Walker at $39 million.
Catch Jake and Ben afternoons from 2 to 6 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 KSL Sports Zone. PK, isn't it crazy having a second team in town? I mean, you worked in L.A., and you were in a newsroom in L.A., so you had multiple people covering multiple teams, and stuff would happen, and it's L.A. They basically have 2 of everything. But it was weird following the Jazz and the Mammoth. Like, every time you look at your phone, it seemed like something's happened. The draft week was crazy with what was happening with both teams. Yesterday was crazy with what was happening with both teams. And to think that we could have a baseball team here in another 5 years, and I did hear about that yesterday. Like, the assumption is it's going to happen, and the assumption is also is the cost is about to go way up. No matter what the price tag is, the price tag of everything's going way up, and put it 4 or 5 years down the line. But nonetheless, it'll happen. And it's just so many things happening all at once. It's a completely different pace.
Yeah, but it's never overwhelming. It's what you want. It's a good thing. It's a great thing for the community. When I worked at the Daily Breeze, we were suburban LA. It was a coastal paper in the South Bay. from Santa Monica down to Long Beach, and then divided basically by the 405 west of that. And there was a large chunk of people. And we had this big, huge whiteboard. And in those days, nobody had cell phones, right? And so you'd check into a hotel and you would call in and let the people know what the number was, right? People on the desk. And at one point, with all the stuff that we had available to cover, there was like 10 names on that list with the phone numbers. And it just made everything so exciting to be a part of it. And I think as this town grows up from a sports standpoint, it does make it exciting. And having I think that one of the big things that I've seen in the advancement is the Utah football program, and having it be as good as it is. That's just added to the excitement in the community. And now both of these teams being expected to have really good 26 seasons, it just adds to the anticipation. That's what I say for myself here. As far as future development, I really don't want the Sun Devils to go anywhere that the Cats aren't coming along, because that was part of the fabric, and that's what I want. And so here to have these two teams and making moves here within days of each other in the draft, literally the same week, just adds to the level of excitement. And even if you're a casual, you still pay attention to a degree as far as, well, what's going on, because you're a sports fan. So, hey, let's check out, see what are this Mammoth? What is this, man? What are they about? What are they doing here? And then last year when in the playoff, even if you didn't care at all, you still were aware of it. My wife is in a golf tournament with her friend yesterday, and she comes home. I'm home already, and I just throw something out. I threw it out. Like, she probably wouldn't care, but I just wanted to throw it out because we got in the car and we were going for a decent drive. And I said, "Oh, man, did you hear that the Jazz traded Kessler to the Lakers?" She said, "Yeah, that's all my partners were talking about on the golf course." I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah. The one gal was just breaking it down like crazy." Yeah. And the others picked up on it. Oh, yeah. Now, obviously, those sports-oriented women, because they're playing in a golf tournament, right? And so they're talking about it. Yeah, and I think it's great for the community. And then if MLB comes, it'll even be better.
We got a lot of reaction to this. We'll get into it in our next segment with Ben Anderson. I think Chad speaks for a lot of people. Kessler is greater than Hayes and Nurkic combined. I was really, all caps, really looking forward to watching our young team compete and seeing how all the players fit in. While I think the Lakers overpaid for Kessler, and I'm happy we got some picks and swaps for him, I'm still bummed I don't get to see that team compete together. And Bo is like, yeah, it would have been nice to keep him at the lower price. But that was impossible. Kessler probably is better than Hayes and Nurkic combined. That's why he's getting paid more money than those two combined. But the price point really matters. The price point really matters. But I get Chad's disappointment. He was all bought in on the previous group, and now he's got to adjust.
I'm disappointed too, but everything across the world is it worth the cost? You go to buy a house, right? Okay. This house A is nicer than house B, but can I afford house A? That doesn't mean I can't be happy in house B. I very well could and probably will be, because you get one shot at life and might as well try to make it as happy as you can. So they weighed all those things, and this is what they come up with. And I don't think it's a devastating blow, though. That's the thing. My optimism has changed a little bit, but I don't know that it's necessarily dropped, because they have so much talent available with the guys who are there. The nucleus of the guys include Peterson in there. And so it still, to me, makes it a fascinating, intriguing storyline that we're going to have from October to April and hopefully into May.
All that changed is the timeline. The number one thing, I think, having been here for the Gordon Hayward walking away and they get nothing, don't let that happen. You knew with the money, and I was ready to, bite the bullet, pay the money. Now, sooner or later, that's going to be a problem. And I knew it was going to be a problem in 2 years. And then when I saw the money, I thought, well, that could be a problem in 1 year. And the only thing I left out in this equation was, rather than it's going to be a problem sooner or later, and they'll have to deal with it sooner or later, the Jazz opted for, no, let's deal with it soonest. Why deal with it in a year or two when we'll more likely be in a position of weakness because everybody will know what we have to do? Let's do it while the Lakers are in a position of weakness because the new GM needs to impress the new owner. We know it's going to be a problem eventually. This is a pretty good offer right now. Let's just do it right now. They were always going to have to send talent away because they couldn't pay everybody. Because they've drafted well and they've traded well, and that's what they're going to have to do. They're not going to be able to afford everybody. So they just decided to do it rather than sooner or later. They decided to do it soonest. So, and that is a little disappointing, Chad, and I get it. Hey, that was really intriguing that the team was going to be really big and really athletic, and now it's not quite as big and it's not quite as athletic. But that doesn't mean it still can't beat people with its size and athleticism and a ton of skill at the offensive end of the floor. It's going to look a little different. We're not going to get to see what we expected, but they decided to deal with it soonest because it looked like they had the Lakers over the barrel a little bit. And in a year or two, somebody else might have had them over the barrel.
Yeah, but if they're over the barrel, Oklahoma City was over the barrel, and they've had to they've jettisoned some guys, and Lou Dort looks like he's on his way, but they got a title out of it, and that can't be replaced. And I probably wouldn't say, oh man, the Lakers or the Jazz are going to win a title in the next 2 years. I understand that, but until Oklahoma City became what they were we going to say that? So who knows? Yeah. So we never saw it play out, so we can't evaluate it in that way. And we'll never be able to evaluate it because it never played out.
There's this part of the equation now with championship teams. You got to go right up to that financial edge to build the championship team. And as soon as you do, the teams that are desperate for one reason or another are willing to overpay your guys, and you can't keep them all. Now, maybe you jettison smaller role players, bigger role players, stars, but we've seen Denver let go of payroll. We're seeing the Knicks let go of payroll. We're seeing Oklahoma City let go of payroll. They've all had a parade. But the rest of the league that isn't as good is willing to overpay a little to get better because they're all looking over their shoulder at their jobs. It's just the way it goes.
I'm not willing to say right now that the Lakers overpaid Kessler.
It might work out.
They overpaid
it
him.
might. You're right. It might. I think the odds are they overpaid. But to your point, if you're betting on a young player, you're hoping for more growth, and then it all works out. And the truth is the next couple of years are a squeeze, but I've already seen estimations on where the salary cap is going. The squeeze for the Lakers will be in the short run, like it would have been for the Jazz. You get 3-4 years out, that deal might be livable because the cap is going to keep going up because the TV money's locked in.
The Lakers overpaid by $4 million. Is that really overpaying?
Time will tell. I mean, it's in relation to the rest of your roster.
Not if he's that good.
Right. If he improves, you're right. All right, DJ and PK, we'll talk all about this with Ben next. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're joined now by Ben Anderson, Jazz Insider for KSL Sports. Ben, good morning. Thanks for waking up early.
Good morning, guys.
All right, we are curious. There are so many things to say about this Walker Kessler deal to the Lakers. What is the number one most important thing about this deal that people should get their arms around, even though there's 50 things to get your arms around?
The Jazz don't have a starting center. I think that's the big piece of it, is that you have to have that player on your team if you want to compete, and now you've got to go find one. And Yusuf Nurkic is not the worst stopgap, and Jackson Hayes is a fine backup for a year, but it's not going to get you where you want to go. Ultimately, those aren't the pieces. Ideally, Yusuf Nurkic should be your backup, and you've got a starter in front of him who's a better player and prevents you from scoring at the rim. So that's got to be the next big move for the Jazz.
Okay, assuming that move isn't necessarily now or this season, we'll see how the season progresses at the deadline and so forth. What do you think the lineups will be to try to patchwork that?
Yeah, I think you're going to start with Yusuf Nurkic at the 5, and then you'll have kind of what everyone expected: Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, either Ace Bailey or Darian Peterson at the 2, and then Keontae at the 1. I have said I would not rule out a weird lineup where Svi Mykhailiuk starts, just so you're not having to say, well, Ace is the long-term starter going forward or Darren is the long-term starter going forward at the 2. And Svi Mykhailiuk had a very good year last year until basically he was benched because he was going to help them win too many games. So I wouldn't rule it out entirely, but I think that's going to be the rotation. And then, coming off the bench, you're going to have probably Jackson Hayes playing a lot of the 5, but I think you'll be able to mix Kyle Filipowski in. I think you'll be able to mix Jaren Jackson Jr. in, and they'll get to 48 minutes that way.
I think the argument to bring 2 guys off the bench is a good one because you've got 5 guys who need the ball and need shots. So having 3 of the 5 on the court at all times, does that become the priority as far as setting the rotation, and then you figure out the rest of the pieces from there?
Certainly can be. It would have been easier, I think, to bring both young guys off the bench if Jusuf Nurkic was your backup center, just because he can run the offense. He's so capable of doing that, as is Isaiah Collier at this point in his career. It would have made it easier for, a lineup that featured at least 2 young guys, whether that's Peterson or Bailey, or, maybe Cody Williams is still in that mix, or Brice Sensabaugh, who is maybe not the youngest guy yet. But I think balancing that would have been a possibility. Maybe Brice Sensabaugh just steps in and starts at the 2. Maybe he has a very good summer and jumps up, and we'll see. So I think if ideally in a perfect world, which is what the Jazz were hoping for, you were going to get somebody like Jusuf Nurkic coming off the bench, it would have made it a little bit easier to incorporate some of those young guys in the second unit. It's a little bit harder with Jackson Hayes, who doesn't create shots for anybody, doesn't create shots for himself, kind of needs to be spoon-fed a little bit. Nurk doesn't need a lot of shots, but he does know how to get them for others.
Assuming the deal would have been the same if the Jazz had matched, why not match it?
I don't think we can assume the deal would have been the same. I suspect the metric or the negotiation was this: we're going to give him $40 million. And the Jazz said, well, we want to sign and trade because we don't want it. We'll match 40. If we have to match 40, we'll match 40, and you're not going to have a center. And they said, okay, what do we have to give you? And they said, well, 2 first-round draft picks, and we won't match. And they said, well, we're not going to pay $40 million and 2 first-round draft picks. So they negotiate down a little bit when the Jazz get their draft picks, and kind of everybody wins with the exception of Walker Kessler, unfortunately for Walker in this situation. But it's the hard part about being a restricted free agent. You don't really have a lot of leverage. So if it had been 32, no strings attached, I think the Jazz probably match, and that's their starting center going forward. It's probably the same deal, 4 years, which I'm surprised the Jazz maybe didn't get there before this negotiation window opened, but we will learn and we'll see how accurate any of it is. I don't know if Walker wanted to be here. I know he sent out an Instagram post, but clearly he made every push to get out of Utah once the salary caps, once it became free agency, and then the salaries were presented in front of him.
I don't know if the number was 40, but the number getting leaked out was mid to high 30s. So it's pretty easy to say the number could have been 36 or 37, in which case the Lakers saved themselves a little bit of money and the Jazz acquired a couple of picks and the opportunity to pick up a 3rd and 4th one. And I think it's also safe to say that the Jazz liked Walker Kessler, but they didn't love him. Because when you love him, you don't offer him $28 million.
Yeah, he doesn't get the free agency.
Right.
Yeah, you signed him last year. If you love him,
right.
You signed him last season.
Yes.
Coming off of a really good year 3 as a young center, and the Jazz said they wanted to prioritize flexibility. You don't prioritize flexibility with the right guy. You have flexibility to sign the right guy. So they kind of showed their cards a little bit last year. Again, I think in a perfect world, Walker Kessler's back on this team and they've got him at a price they can afford, and they match with Keontae George going forward, and they just kind of have a young, solid starting 5. And when that no longer was a possibility, they had to find a way to pivot. And again, I don't think it's the ideal outcome. I think salvaging 2 unprotected future first-round picks and some swaps is good. I'm not sure it's like the unbelievable package some people have made it out to be, because, it's probably at best it's half of that, because you're going to have to reroute some of that stuff to get another player back. And if you're rerouting half of that stuff to get another player back, you're probably not getting somebody as good as Walker Kessler, because if you could, the Lakers would have just done that.
Right. As far as a solution, a better solution, I should say, do you think that is going to happen maybe before the start of the season or during the season or beyond?
I would be surprised if it happened in the off season. I just don't see the market softening all that much. Now, it's possible. Maybe something sits in front of the Cleveland Cavaliers and they decide, we have to split up our big front court, and they choose Evan Mobley over Jared Allen, and suddenly they need a place to trade Jared Allen. And the Jazz could figure out a way to get that done, but it is hard. The Jazz do not have great salaries to match. They've got 2 huge salaries, and then they have Darren Peterson as their 3rd highest paid player, and none of those 3 guys are getting traded, I don't think. So that's where it gets really difficult, and they don't just have all this cap space to take somebody back into. So that's where the Jazz could run into some issues, and why it might end up having to be, honestly, as late as next summer, but potentially in season. I think it's more likely it's in season than certainly before then.
I want to sit here and say top 6, 50 wins. That has to be the goal. But without Kessler, and with that Kessler's value now sitting in assets that can't play in a game currently, I guess I have to soften on that top 6. I'm thinking top 8 now. If things go right, maybe they get top 6. I won't rule it out, but I don't think I can demand it anymore. What are you not ruling out? What are you demanding? What do you think? Assuming there's no more changes.
Yeah, the hard part is not only did the Jazz get a little bit worse, but the Lakers got better.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's another team you're directly competing with in the top 6. I mean, 6 spots, it's a 15% chance of getting there. And now the Lakers, very likely, if Luke is healthy with Walker, gets there. You know, that's a top 6 team in the West. It's not a perfect team. I don't think they're a championship team, but one of those spots is gone, and the Thunder are going to get one of those spots, and the Spurs are going to get one of those spots. So that's 45% of it. If we're breaking it up in 15 percentage points, you know, that's basically half. I mean, now you're competing for 3 spots. Are you better than Houston now that Fred VanVleet comes back? Are you better than Minnesota? Maybe Minnesota made a huge mistake trading for LaMelo Ball, but you know, the good news is the Clippers got worse, so they're probably not in competition there, but the Suns are trying to get better. Thought they got better by going out and getting Miles Bridges. So it's a narrow pathway. You're just going to have to win a lot of games. You're going to have to win a lot of games probably without being a very good defensive team, because Walker would have helped there significantly. They should be better because Jaren's on the team and Darren Peterson's on the team, and he should be better than the Jazz's alternatives. But yeah, it's less likely today than it was yesterday that the Jazz have a top 6 team in the West. No question.
If Hayes is not on the floor, how good is this team offensively?
They can be fine. I think it's going to be a good team for the Jazz. I mean, I think if you have either Jaren at the 5 or Yusuf Nurkic at the 5, I think you're pretty dynamic. Now, Jaren's not, a great passer, certainly the way that Yusuf Nurkic is, but you can play 5 out. And I think that's probably another piece of this Walker Kessler trade that we haven't talked enough about, or I haven't talked enough about, which is just the Jazz just really loved playing 5 out last year. They loved all the space that their young players had. It's a huge reason Keontae George exploded the second, or even maybe before the Jazz drafted Darren Peterson. I said if they were going to draft him, I would make bringing Yusuf Nurkic back a priority, because he just creates so much space for those young guards. And he's done it his whole life. I mean, he was a part of Damian Lillard's explosion and CJ McCollum's explosion and then Devin Booker's explosion. And then he did it with Keontae George last year. So I think he's going to do that for Darren Peterson as well. That's going to create by itself a very good offense. And then the fact that, Lauri's got a solidified spot. You've got a much better bucket getter who can kind of go get something for himself, and Jaren Jackson Jr. I think they can get top 10, especially if they're trying to win. If they're trying to go out there and win games, which now they have to, you can get to a top 10 offense with this team, which a top 10 offense and the 25th best defense does compete for the playoffs. It doesn't compete for a title, but it can get you into the postseason.
25th best defense. Come on, we got to set the bar higher than that. 25th?
24th.
I would love to, but you got to have more than one defensive player on your team.
Well, okay, but isn't Peterson a defensive player also? Isn't Ace a defensive player also? Markkanen, you got to up your game. You're making a ton of money. You've played more regular season games without a single playoff game than any active player in the NBA. He's not going to be a great defender, but he needs to be decent.
Yeah, he does need to be decent, and we have not seen it a whole lot. Again, he's not been asked to, but Keontae George has yet to be decent. Ace and Darren can get there, but they are young. How ready that is, I'm not sure. There is some guys break through and are okay. As young players that end up being very good defenders. Not a ton are really good early in their career, especially on the perimeter. There's just too many Jordan Clarksons out there who love having a rookie on them and will just torch them every time they get matched up. These guys are just too good early in their, or later in their careers compared to the young defenders that are coming into the league. So, no, I mean, let's see what the Jazz do. I think they're going to go and try and get some defense in free agency. They have to, because they know that they're the 25th or 28th best defense in the NBA as it stands today. Jaren will help. Jaren knowing where to be and telling everyone else where to be will certainly be helpful, but you've got to have guys who actually, one-on-one or late in the game can get a stop. So that's going to be a priority. So, yeah, if Darren's good and Jaren is good, which we know he is, and then you go and get another wing piece, maybe you can start to build it together, and Lauri is your 4th or 5th best player on the roster, or best defender on the roster, is more passable. Or if you can make it so Keontae George is the 5th best defensive player on the roster in the starting lineup, you're probably in better shape. But those guys have to take a major step forward if the Jazz want to get out of the 20s.
Not that he would need to give the final approval, but how much do you think they kept Jaren Jackson informed? Because this has an opportunity or a situation where it could impact him greatly with Kessler not being there.
Probably not a lot. I don't think at this point the Jazz are really beholden to anybody on the roster. You know, the Lakers probably went and got Walker at any cost because they're entirely beholden to Luka Doncic. And before that, they were entirely beholden to LeBron James, and to the point where they had to draft his son. You know, like some guys are so good and you have to go out and sign their brothers if you're Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't know if the Jazz were ever talking to Jaren about, oh, do we have to have Walker back or anything along those lines. They may ask Jaren what type of center he likes playing next to. He's played next to Steven Adams. He's played next to a lot of different types of players. And he may have a preference. He may like guys who give him space. He may like other guys who defend centers so he can be kind of a help guy who swings around. And even if they don't ask him, they'll go back and look at all of his tape and figure out what seems to be the best and what the analytics seem to imply he needs. But you know, he'd probably love a better rebounder next to him because he's not much of a rebounder, and somebody to give him a little bit of room to operate in the post. I'm sure he would love that as well. So I don't think they probably ran it through Jaren at all, but I wouldn't be surprised if they consult with him just to see what types of players he's played against, who he likes, who he doesn't like, along those lines.
Don't you think it's going to be center by committee? Yes, upgrade it, but they don't have the money to pay every position. They're paying the guys who are going to play the 3 and the 4 primarily. And plenty of teams have been very good with center by committee to some degree. So isn't that the way they go? Even if it's an upgraded center by committee. Upgrade Nurkic, upgrade Jackson, whatever.
Yeah, I think you're right. At some point, you can't pay everyone $30 million in the starting lineup. And that's where they're pretty rapidly heading, you know, and maybe they don't even getting there. They don't end up getting there by the time Darren Peterson is signing his second contract or Ace Bailey signing his second contract. And you've probably moved off of Lauri Markkanen or Jaren Jackson Jr. or Keontae George at that point, if it ends up being the case. I don't know. That's so far down the road. As far as basketball years go, a lot can change. But yeah, at some point you have to choose, well, this is just going to be our $12 million player or our $15 million player or even 20, but that's not a ton of money in today's NBA, especially for a starter. So yes, I think you're going to have a couple of guys, probably a couple of guys that give you different looks. And Nurkic might be a part of that. You know, he gives you a really different look than a lot of centers. And then maybe you do have an upgraded Jackson Hayes somewhere else that does provide some rim defense and some athleticism and some size. And you value that, but they both play 24 minutes a night. I honestly thought Mitchell Robinson was going to be the contingency plan for all of these teams, you know, Detroit, Utah, or LA, if they didn't get Walker or Jalen Duren. And then you saw Mitchell Robinson sign yesterday morning with the Boston Celtics for 3 years, $45 million, which is the perfect committee player, right? That's 24 minutes, plays defense. He's kind of a specialist, but he is very useful. And he would have actually worked really well, I thought, next to Yusuf Nurkic, as far as you have one style when he's on the floor and another style when he's off the floor. And that's just not the direction they went.
We saw Quinn Snyder give the ball to Donovan Mitchell. How do you think Darren Peterson will be handled?
I think they will test that a lot early on, especially in the summer league. They'll get to run some sets with him as a point guard and see how he operates there and operates with a screener and operates without a screener, because Will Hardy doesn't actually run that many screens. So if he needs a screen, they're going to figure that out. I'll be curious if Micah Handlogden or whoever the Jazz's center is in this playoffs or in this summer league can run some of the dribble handoff stuff that he's going to run a lot with Yusuf Nurkic and see how he operates out of that. Conceivably, it should be pretty good. But if you recognize early on, hey, he's just not quite there as a ball handler or a playmaker. I mean, you saw the video Chandler Holt tweeted out. You just put him in the corner and let him hit open threes, and there should be a lot of threes for him. You know, that corner shot should be available for somebody on the Jazz this year. And if he's knocking them down at a high level, that should be very valuable, because you have to throw bodies at Keontae George. You have to throw bodies at Lauri Markkanen. You have to throw bodies at Jaren Jackson Jr. And if you've got then Yusuf Nurkic offensively kind of orchestrating as somebody who is a slight danger to step out and hit a three, but can certainly hit passers, I think you're going to see Darren find a healthy role at worst as a shooter. But yeah, I'm curious to see how his playmaking goes. That was probably his biggest weakness outside of availability at Kansas. The 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio is not ideal. It's also not a death sentence. Keontae George had a negative assist to turnover ratio. Ace Bailey had a negative assist to turnover ratio, and those guys are fine.
Ben, we talk about pretty much all the players who are under contract for the Jazz in one role or another, and there's one guy who almost never gets talked about. And maybe at this point he's simply a $6 million contract to go into a trade somewhere down the line. But maybe he's also the guy who just go out and gets it done, and then Will Hardy looks at everybody else and like, hey, everybody else has got a rep, but you know who gets the deflection? You know who gets the rebound? You know who makes the pass is John Konchar. What do you think his future is with the Jazz? Because he is under contract for the next season. Actually, he might be under contract for the next 2 seasons. Well, what do you think his future is?
Yeah, he should compete for a spot in this rotation, and if he ends up beating out a Cody Williams, it probably makes sense. He's played a lot everywhere. Every coach he's ever played for, he's only ever been in Memphis, but he's had several coaches and they all seem to turn to him, and generally you just start to believe coaches. Those guys know a lot about basketball and they know a lot about what helps you win, and they rely on him in these very specific roles. And one night he can grab you 8 rebounds, and one night he can get you 5 assists, and one night he can score 12 points. But he doesn't need any one of them to be happy. And I think those guys are really valuable. And again, if he doesn't need shots on a team that has a lot of guys that want shots, that becomes really valuable. It's also Cody's, sell if he's trying to get into the rotation is I'm not going to need a lot of shots. I'll finish some transition opportunities and maybe I can get some pokeaways and create some shots for myself on fast breaks. But no, I think John Konchar, is a winner. And winners are going to be key on this roster, and he's proven he knows how to win. He also has a good relationship with Jaren Jackson Jr., so I'm sure those guys have some chemistry together on and off the floor. So I would expect to see him. I think the Jazz are going to play 10 guys, and I bet he's one of them.
Yeah, you just answered my question in terms of how far or how deep do you think they will go by saying 10. That's literally was going to ask that question. So now I have to be on my toes since you took my answer and question away. With that in mind, I'm looking forward, and it's a little bit of a subset. It's not the primary story, but the competition between and among those guys from 6 to 10, I think that has an opportunity to be very interesting. And I'm really intrigued. And obviously the starters and how Peterson fits in and blah, 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 all those things will be primary. But how much are you looking forward to see who is in that rotation from 6 to 10 and maybe from 7 to 10 and what their roles are compared to what their roles have been the last couple of years when they weren't trying to win?
Yeah, let's look at the starting 5 to just take half of that conversation out. It's going to be Keontae George. It's going to be one of Ace Bailey or Darren Peterson. It's going to be Lauri Markkanen. It's going to be Jaren Jackson Jr. It's going to be Yusuf Nurkic, I would assume. So that's 5 of the 10. Whoever doesn't get that starting spot, Darren Peterson or Ace Bailey plays in the second unit. So that's 6. Kyle Filipowski is going to play. That's 7. Jackson Hayes is going to play probably as a backup. That's 8, unless he's just so far down the roster. But he was better than DeAndre Ayton for the Lakers at times last year, so I suspect he plays. That's 8. That leaves 2 spots for Isaiah Collier, Brice Sensabaugh, Cody Williams, Svi Mikhailiuk, and John Konchar, who we were just talking about. Like, that's a meat grinder. That's really, really hard to break into that spot. And Will Hardy might rotate some of the young guys in and some of the young guys out. And if Darren Peterson's the backup point guard and Isaiah Collier doesn't play, maybe Isaiah Collier's out of the conversation. So, yeah, that's going to be really, really difficult for guys who, I don't want to say didn't earn minutes. They made the NBA. They earned their minutes by getting to the league in the first place, but aren't competing for a playoff spot in their first 1, 2, 3 years. And now that's got to be the big conversation. So yeah, you're going to have to be sharp. It's going to have to go down to the most consistent players, which is why I won't be surprised if Svi and John Konchar end up playing.
I think we're going to see, if you look at the total number of minutes, I think you're going to see an 11th and 12th player emerge because so many guys are going to play 60, 65. Maybe a few guys will play 70 games. It's not going to be the wholesale injury report that became really the only story on game morning every game last year, certainly the last half of the season. But there's still going to be a lot of that, and that's going to open the door. You're out, but then suddenly you're in because of who's out for that night or that week.
Yeah. How many guys play 2,000 minutes? That's kind of the high number, a higher number now in the NBA that's getting you, 70 games at 30 minutes a night. So how many guys are actually going to get to 2,000 minutes? In recent years, it was like only Keontae George, maybe Isaiah Collier, and that was just kind of out of need. They needed somebody to dribble the ball, and they didn't have a whole lot of guys to dribble the ball consistently and kind of set up the offense, and they were invested in developing those guys. Yeah, do you get 12 guys at 1,400 minutes? Is that more realistic? Or, on average, 12 guys end up getting above 600 minutes, 800 minutes. That means they've kind of broken into the rotation. And, Jaren's going to miss games and Lowry's going to miss games and Nurk probably going to miss a few games. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities, but opening night, that shouldn't be the case.
Ben, we appreciate it as always. We'll hear you at 2 o'clock today with Jake, and who knows what will happen between now and then.
See you guys.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Ben joining us, and he'll be on the air again this afternoon. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Caller 12. You want to do it now or you want to do it after the break?
Let's do it now.
We're going to do it now. Do it now. We'll do it live. Caller 12 right now wins a lush American flag blanket. Celebrating the USA's 250th birthday, courtesy of Minky Couture. Incredibly soft, the lush patriotic flag blanket is perfect for celebrating the season. This plush patriotic design available in one size. It makes a cozy addition to summer gatherings, holiday decor, or everyday lounging. Has the flag design on both sides of the blanket for a complete look from every angle. Sized to match a standard American flag, it also includes an exclusive America 250 Minky Couture label created to commemorate the nation's semi-quincentennial celebration. Semi-quincentennial, PK. Did you have that on your bingo card this morning?
You're great at that.
Oh, great. Thanks. Hi, I read for a living. Okay, DJ and PK. Caller 12 right now. Call 801-575-ZONE. 801-575-ZONE and win your semi-quincentennial blanket. Yes, PK, give it a ring. You could win. Hi, this is Bob. I want to win the blanket. All right, we're right back with everything you missed in this show. Next, stay with us. Slacker Road headlines brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. Call them at 1-855-TRAJAN1 or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. What have you missed over the last 3.5 hours? So much stuff, but mostly reaction to Walker Kessler. He's going to L.A. I think we can all agree Walker lost a few million in this trade, didn't he? That's what happened there, PK. It's only $4.5 million more, and now Walker's going to lose, I don't know, at least 2.5, maybe $3 million of that to taxes. What the heck was the point of that? Man, that whole rumor about mid to high 30s. It makes sense that once the Jazz told the Lakers they were going to match, the Lakers said, "What do we have to get done?" And the Jazz get some draft picks, and the Lakers give Walker a lower number. Oh well, there you go. Life is a restricted free agent.
Yeah, but I'm not going to bleed for the guy. It's
pile of money,
enormous amount of money, and he's only 24 years of age. So the way the system is set up, you become the unrestricted, and before you even hit 30, and if you play to the level that you think you can, then whatever you didn't make, you'll make up. So you have to look at it. You can't just slice it into parts. You have to look at it in its entirety. And so he's going to be handsomely compensated at NBA comparative levels if he plays the way he believes he can play. And we'll see in 4 years what that looks like. And then he'll just recoup that, right? So I'm not going to bleed for the guy, even from the NBA sense. Now, from the everyday average life, obviously, wow. I wish I was his best friend. Actually, I wish I was his father.
The Jazz liked him. They didn't love him. They could have offered him more. If he expands that offensive game, he could be a steal for the Lakers. If he doesn't, then maybe the Jazz can find an upgrade somewhere else. Or at least find most of the production for less money. It does feel a little stopgap center by committee. And it may always be centered by committee. Maybe it could be centered by a better committee. A more talented committee.
Down the line, I don't know about right now.
I think it's down the line. I think it's down the line.
Yeah, but
maybe not far down the line.
There's not a ton of players at his position that are all that good.
And that's why you often see center by committee.
If you just look at it, in these guys, they're by position because there's not that many of them, and the game has changed so much that they tend to be a little bit overvalued because they have a specific skill that they can use. And the Jazz will find that player with that specific skill. And when they do, they will kill them.
Thank you, Liam. And I think the committee is more than two players. I think Filipowski and Jackson are part of the committee. You can go a little smaller because there are times other teams are going to go a little smaller too. So,
well, how big is Conchar?
Not big enough to play center.
Yeah, but he's got a lion tattoo. So just like, Wes Unseld wasn't very big.
Yeah, different era, PK, but thanks.
Or this big man was more important than it is today.
People right now, this is a whole generation of people going, who's Wes Unseld?
Well, they know he's a former coach, Wes Unseld Jr.
Okay, don't get me distracted. The Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. You think the Jazz shouldn't have been making a deal with the Lakers? How about these sworn rivals, the Sixers and the Celtics, who've battled for decades, along with the Knicks? Those three have gone at it over time so many times.
Yeah, those are the three. Yeah.
Right. And now the Celtics trade Jaylen Brown to Philadelphia for Paul George, 2 first-round picks, and 2 second-round picks. And the Sixers, if they have Embiid, then they look loaded. But even without him, they look pretty good. This is a team that, and they're going to have a guy with a chip on his shoulder. And they got a young guy who ought to be improving. Arrow's up in Philly. They ought to be encouraged here.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll see how Jaylen Brown is. Is he just on the verge of being nuts and being a cancer destroyer chemistry-wise and all that stuff? And I think that the thing with Embiid is it sounds good. Okay, Embiid is there, then he's not there. Well, that's not something that you just easily adjust to. Either you're going to be there or you're not going to be there, because then if he's there, that changes everything. It literally changed the entire dynamic of the team. And if he's not there, that changes it too. So I don't think, we'll just plug him in and he'll add his 23 points a game and 14 rebounds or whatever, and away we'll go. I don't think it works that way. But it did look like, they got a player who's better than Paul George. So we'll see what Boston does there. But yeah, I mean, that's a crazy trade. Growing up, I knew everything about the Knicks. I knew everything about Boston, and I knew everything about Philadelphia, right? I mean, those were the teams that when you lived in the Northeast and you're a basketball fan like I was, you just concentrated so much on that. And then you should have seen me 1 year later, like, I got to pay attention to these guys. It's called the Suns. Who are these people? My adjustment was not smooth in many ways.
But it's basically a 6-hour drive from Boston to Philly. It's basically basically Salt Lake to Vegas, except in between is New York City, not Scipio. So let's go. You three. Right. And so that'll make it super interesting. And we were talking earlier about, are the Jazz going to be a Christmas Day game? I guess the odds of that went down a little, but not necessarily a lot. The odds of some combination of Boston, Philly, and New York playing each other are always pretty good, and I think they're great right now. A Boston-Philly game, and then the Knicks, give them anybody else in the, maybe give them Cleveland. Yeah, you can see the 2 Eastern games pretty easily, pretty quickly for Christmas Day.
Yeah, I agree.
Celtics signed Mike Conley, former Jazz man, on a 1-year deal, and they added Mitchell Robinson, taking him away from the Knicks on a 3-year deal. So there you go. More moves for those guys. We also talked a little hockey this morning. Wherever you get your podcasts, listen to Greg Wyshynski, ESPN senior NHL writer, as the Utah Mammoth try to do 2 things at once. Protect their future, and their future 5, 6, 7 years down the line should be really good. But they got so many prospects, they don't need them all in 5 or 6, 7 years. So leverage them now and try to make the club better right now. And there's a definite the future is now feel to the moves that the Mammoth made in the last 24 hours.
Well, I think the opportunity to win as much as possible now helps the future, because you want the young guys to be in the most pressurized situations to get that experience and know where they're at. I mean, Armstrong talked about that. Go listen to what he was talking about yesterday, where he says that it is something when they took the ice, they looked at Vegas and they looked at their guys, and Vegas had more veteran experience and all that stuff. So let those young guys, the younger guys, and mid-younger guys, so to speak, that get them in the most brutal conditions with the highest pressure going on, and that'll pay off for down the line. So you're kind of getting the best of both if you can win at a decent enough level now, and they've established a foundation, and there's not going back. It's only potentially going forward. Now, I don't think that just because they made these moves that, they're going to win that first round playoff series. I don't know that, because obviously we don't even know who they're going to play. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I can see the philosophy behind it.
Other stuff going on. Junior Caminero, homers in 6 straight games. 8 home runs in 6 games. You ever get in a cage, even in batting practice, and feel like the stroke was that good and you could hammer that many home runs? Who gets to have that
softball,
feeling?
Slow pitch softball.
Slow pitch softball. You could hit 8 home runs in 6 games in slow pitch. Have a short porch in left field.
Well, we played at Wilson Park in Torrance, and there was no fence. There was a field on the other side. So I couldn't hit it over their heads. I'd have to cue it down the line.
And then start running, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Dansby Swanson has driven in 26 runs in the last 10 games, which ties the record held by multiple players, including Lou Gehrig and Joe DiMaggio. Nice list to join. Good work.
Or have you gone Joe DiMaggio?
Right?
Yes. Swanson, he's a decent player. He was the number 1 pick coming out of Vanderbilt several years ago, and you want to bemoan the Padres for getting whipped by 20 runs. Well, I can up that because Dansby Swanson was a Diamondback, the number 1 pick, and then they traded him for Shelby Miller. Thank you, Tony La Russa and Dave Stewart. That was the worst trade in the history of sports.
Cubs did win 23-3. I would like to bemoan that. 8 of the runs came in the 8th inning when they had a catcher in there throwing eephus pitches.
So essentially it's meaningless.
Exactly. Now, the fact that the Cubs homered in almost every inning. Let's hear it for the 4th and the 7th. They didn't homer there, but they homered in the other 6 innings. That was brutal. But the whole thing's been brutal. It's been a brutal week, and they're going to the Dodgers now for 4, and great. Awesome.
Holiday weekend in Chavez Ravine.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty good to me, man.
Yes.
With their bitter arch rivals.
Well, it's a one-way rivalry, but sure.
Yeah, I mean,
for the Padres, it is. In San Diego when the Dodgers are coming to town, which they did last weekend. That is as big a deal as it gets, right there.
It's like the Dodgers or the BYU of the WAC Mountain West.
It was the Dodgers and BYU and the Raiders. Those were when I was a kid growing up, those were the teams that came in, and it was a big deal for each of the opposing teams. The top dog. Speaking of top dogs, the United States, top dog again into the round of 16. They're going to play Belgium after beating Bosnia. I'm having a hard – I think now they've done what they were supposed to do, PK. They had to make it to the round of 16 because they've done that in 4 of the last 6 cups. You're at home with this golden generation. Man, if you don't make it that far, Bosnia's got about as many people as Utah. So we got them outnumbered. We ought to have more good players, and we ought to have a better team than we do. Belgium, this is the first team they're going to face in the tournament that's ranked top 20 in the world. I think they're actually ranked 10th. This is a real test, and they're going to have to do it without their leading goal scorer who got a red card. Man, that was harsh, but Balogun's out, so now they got to figure it out. And this is a game, if they win and get to the quarters, then they've had a good tournament. If they don't, it's a bit of a disappointment. There's no way around it. And it's going to be hard being shorthanded, but suck it up. And they did in the last half hour, shorthanded last night. That could have, they only had 1 goal. That could have gone another way, but they defended well and eventually scored on a really good free kick.
Yeah, I mean, but they never lose in Santa Clara.
Thanks, PK. Actually, I think they did. I think they lost a friendly. But they don't lose World Cup games in Santa Clara.
They were friendly. Nobody had a friendly. It's an exhibition game.
Yep.
Let's do American terms so we can understand. It's an exhibition game.
Okay, here's a jersey.
It don't count.
Here's a jersey term. It's a big freaking game Monday. That's what it is. To get to the quarterfinals is a big deal. To beat one of the elite teams in the world is a big deal. The one loss they had doesn't matter. That just showed that they don't have enough depth to, run their 20th best player out there and win. Okay, well, you don't have to. But you need a little bit of depth because you're going to be without your top goal scorer.
Yeah, for sure.
So the World Cup carries on. It was a fairly dramatic day yesterday. And you want drama. Tomorrow night, Madison Square Garden, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce getting married. The Big Apple. Seriously, what sports venue, PK? What sports venue is perfect for weddings? Rose Bowl, Wrigley, Fenway, MSG. What else have you got?
The sanctity of marriage
unites
one with another. And I'll even stay politically correct here, which is unusual for me.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. I'm learning from you.
The Horseshoe, Columbus, Ohio. There it is.
No.
Sorry.
I want a chapel.
Oh.
Give me a nice drive-through chapel in Vegas.
A chapel. A drive-through chapel.
I was once in a wedding line in a drive-through chapel in Vegas.
Well, if you're going to get married in a big-time chapel, then it's the most famous chapel. You got to go Sistine, right? I don't know if they do weddings there.
I've never been to Greece, so I don't know about that.
Oh, nice. Well played. Notre Dame? Have you been to Notre Dame? The church in Paris, not the football stadium in the university in Indiana.
I've never been to Europe.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't. And you taunt me because you've been to Europe multiple times.
Nope.
I haven't.
Nope, not true. I've been
once. Multiple in my mind because you went to multiple countries.
We did do that.
The same thing.
We did do that,
so
and we did
the same thing.
We flew home from Paris, and we had 24 hours, 36 hours, whatever it was, and we did go to Notre Dame. And the interesting thing is, you walk in, all this tourists there, and it's huge. And like in one part, like mass is going on. I mean, there's a priest over there, and there's people, and over here there's tourists, and they're buying stuff. It was bizarre, crazy.
Yes, and I've been. I know the Mass. Our Father who art in heaven. Believe me, I know the Mass. I'm nothing if not Mass.
And 50 yards away, people are gawking and buying souvenirs. Go figure. All right, DJ and PK, we're going to take a break. When we come back, your feedback next. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The Utah Jazz have lost Walker Kessler. He's going to the Lakers. The reaction has overwhelmed us, PK. Over 100 comments on the Facebook post you put up. And that is always like after 100, you're just showing off. That's a major topic anytime you hit 100. I think it's 122 now. Jeffrey's reaction, I'm surprised Walker commanded that much on the free agent market. I'm glad the Jazz saved the cash. They can get what he gives for less. Getting all the Jazz did could be a fleece job. You just don't know what the Lakers are going to be when we get to 2031 and 2033.
Yeah, true, obviously. And also, we don't know what the negative effect on the Jazz is going to be in the 26-27 season by not having him either.
We'll never know exactly because we won't know exactly how good they could have been without him. But
right.
I suspect 5 games, but I think where they are in the standings, you move 5 games, you could move several spots. Yeah, you can move several spots. I think this trade could be the difference between being in the 3, 4, 5, 6 group and having a chance to win, and maybe not, maybe you get smoked, who knows, but at least you have a chance to win a playoff series versus you're in the play-in and then you're probably 7-8 and you're probably wildly overmatched. I wouldn't be surprised if that is the pain point here in the short run. Obviously, I'm guessing on both those, but if I had to guess, that's what I'd guess right now.
I might have a little more optimism, but I can't just wildly say you're nuts by having that take.
I think that there are 5 teams in the West that are clearly better than the Jazz right now. Now, injuries could change that. Injuries could open a spot or two. And as a matter of fact, injuries usually do. But just assuming and the injuries can happen to you, but just assuming that everybody's healthy, which is a dangerous thing to assume, Oklahoma City's better, San Antonio's better. I think the Lakers are better. I think Denver's better. And I think Houston is probably better. So there's 5 teams.
Well, let's see where LeBron goes, too.
All right, yes, there's still moves to come, and what does he do? And there may be more teams than the 5. I'm not saying the Jazz are 6, but I think they're competing for the 6th spot. And Minnesota's competing for that spot. Phoenix and Portland would like to compete for that. But the Jazz, I think the Clippers are pretty clearly going backwards. You know, the Jazz are going to pass some teams. I still think, they should be in front of 5 teams and get in the top 10.
Well, now they have a collective chip because, wow, you're not nearly as good as you were 2 days ago. What are you going to do about it?
Go out and play with the chip on your shoulder and win. And also, because you do have a deep roster, there's going to be a lot of competition. And we'll hear about how much these guys like each other and how much they get along. But there's also guys, if we can figure out the difference in playing time between guys 8 or 9 and guy 12, or guy 4 or 5 or guy 8 or 9, well, they can. So how much playing time do you want? So that ought to help lift the whole group too.
There's 3 things I want: playing time, money, and winning.
I got to say, I can't say he's automatically wrong, but Ben bugged me when he said they're the 25th best defensive team. They've been 30, and Tim Lacombe has said all along, hey, part of the problem here is you made the meeting optional. PK, have you and I ever gone to meetings and it turns out people treat them like they're optional? In some cases, they were labeled optional. So when a meeting's labeled optional, a lot of people aren't going to show up. Well, defense has been optional because they were tanking. Now they're trying to win, and they have a deep enough roster. Defense isn't optional anymore. Will Hardy will pull you, and then when you ask him why you're not playing, he's going to point to your defense. So Tim's thought is that they can improve defensively just because winning and defense are no longer optional. They're not tanking. Everybody knew what the deal was, and everybody knows the deal has changed. So I don't think they can be a great defensive team as currently constituted, but I don't see why they can't get to 15th or 20th.
I think all their stats were untrue.
Yeah.
Because the purpose behind the game is to win. And once that purpose is removed, like you talked about the U.S. team in the game that they lost in soccer. Well, the purpose of that game wasn't to win.
Right.
Right. They'd already clinched. They did what they needed to do. So why am I going to worry about that?
Yep.
And it's not like I totally blow it off either, but I'm saying, why am I going to worry about, oh my gosh, they don't have this, that. I watched that game, and that game had a feel that wasn't like the other games. And I'm not a big soccer guy, and I could figure it out. Right. So they were playing so many guys, I couldn't even name you half the guys without a roster. And I'm supposed to think that then equates to an accurate standing in the defensive categories or offensive categories in the league. I don't know that I can really do that. Now, this year, the answer would be yes, it would reflect, and it's going to reflect accurately. But I'm not really sure where they come in on either end of the floor that way. That's something that's going to have to unfold as the season progresses.
Greg says, I'm surprised. I think we got a lot back for Kessler. Late first-round picks are now almost as valuable as early picks with the new draft lottery rules. A couple months ago, I wouldn't have been super happy about that haul, but now it looks pretty good. And I think you have to factor on top of that that the organization, and I get it's changed because Austin's here now, but a lot of the same people are still here. The organization has done a pretty good job of identifying late first, early second-round players and developing them. It's a different deal. You're trying to find somebody with one skill who can help you play minutes. You're not trying to find, necessarily the star who's going to carry the team. Maybe you get fortunate and you do, but they've done a pretty good job with those guys.
And when are those picks available? 30 and 31 and 33?
Yep.
What the crap am I even talking about that for now?
Well, I think the other thing is what you pointed out. By the time it gets to 31, who says the Jazz are going to have that pick? Those picks are valuable.
And who
assets.
says it's not going to be a top 5 pick?
And it could be. We don't even know what the lottery rules will be that far out. And they may have traded it for a veteran along the way who really helps them. So
yeah,
they have assets. And we'll see how they get deployed.
Amen, Captain.
Brad, I've said this all along. Name a center Danny Ainge has spent max dollars on. He doesn't spend max money on centers.
Robert Parrish.
Pre-salary cap, Robert Parrish. Can we keep going or we got to go to break? Wrap it up. Okay, we got to wrap it up, PK. For a holiday weekend, you have anything to say before you go off to enjoy fireworks on a 3-day weekend?
Enjoy it, man. Only comes around once a year.
True that right there. All right, coming up next, Scotty G and Tim Lacombe, the coach on the way. Stay with us.